together to do the whole thing. So it's yours to keep. Check it out. See what you think.
Oh, okay, well, all right, well, thanks.
We'd love it.
Yeah, all right.
You guys ready over here?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Sure.
Are recording. We are going to crank up, start. This is the city council regular business meeting for Thursday, May 16th, 2024. It is 6 p.m. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Cool,
Here.
Livingston. Here. Meineke. Here. Mayor Phillips.
I am here. We do have a quorum, so we'll move on. Item number 2 is pledge of allegiance. Would you please arise and say the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next is approval of the agenda. We're gonna move item 7Q to the regular agenda. Would anybody like to move any of the other consent agenda items to the regular agenda? What is 7Q? It's the IDA.
Yes, that's fine.
IDA. Okay, you wanted that too? Anything else? Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Cool, seconded by Livingston. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same. Motion carries. Item number 4 is a dedicated work session for council and myself. Regular city council meeting is gonna begin immediately following the work session. First on the docket is the Southwest Corridor update by Snyder and Associates. Mark Carrington, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Mark Carrington, Snyder and Associates, Lincoln, Iowa. This evening, what we want to do is give you just a quick overview update of the efforts we've made on the feasibility study we've been looking at for the Southern Loop Connector, arterial type roadway in the southwest portion of the growth area for the community. Myself, traffic group leader at Snyder, and I've got Andy Burke with me here, project manager who's worked for you on several other projects in the community. Wade couldn't make it this evening. Background with this, certainly you folks have addressed some things in your comprehensive plan that you finished up here a few years ago. And obviously with all the city growth occurring, goals for some type of development in the west, southwest areas of the community, but we also believe in the southeast portions of the community. This has a relationship to that. A lot of investment that you're looking at with all the interceptor sewer work you're going to be doing down the area, the industrial park. But we really believe, this all ties back to what you've identified in your comp plan, which is some east-west roadway type needs, potential interstate access. And again, what we're trying to do is really take a long-term view. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about, you're going to need to try to visualize out a tremendous number of years, 20, 30 years, perhaps. Again, looking at your own comp plan, all the different land use you've identified down in that, southwest area between 28 and out to I-35 and just north of the North River. And in that there was this, arterial type corridor drawn on a map, added to the comp plan that identified what we're calling this Southern Loop Connector. And one of the things we think is important to focus on this is it's not only your own needs as a community in Norwalk and, facilitating growth, but also needs for the regional area and connectivity you may serve out of this. So again, that first brown area you're seeing with the generally path for the Southern Loop Connector, but then you start talking about things like the potential extension of Grand Prairie Parkway further south, and obviously with its connectivity to the north, as well as what could be in the southeast portion of the communities that would tie over to things like Culture Drive extended Southwest 9th, or maybe even 65, 69 someday. So what we did with this study was we really tried to look at a lot of different opportunities, very high level. This is not about identifying this is the exact alignment for the road or where it should precisely be, even to say exactly how large of a road it is. But we did this very high level review, and really we just wanted to look at what are the possible opportunities for this? What type of things do we need to avoid as we're planning for this corridor? You know, and the idea being that you can use this, start looking forward for funding opportunities, preservation of right of way, or as developments come in, knowing if something is a potential corridor, talking about right of way preservation, and really to coordinate with people. You know, Luke and I have had a lot of conversations as things have been happening and working on this, and you know, how does this relate to landowners out there in the area, annexation things, you know, developers talking about things, and as well the other communities. You know, West Des Moines, as we started talking about some of that regional need, you know, seeing what their plans are, obviously coming into the neighbor. And then, of course, the county and eventually the DOT, as we start to talk about is there potential for interstate access out there. Forgot to mention, please interrupt with any questions as I go. I know something may pop in your head as we're going here. One of the things right off the bat, we were saying, why the road? You know, so what's our traffic demand potential? Well, as you look at that map again, just kind of a reminder of the land use that was adopted in the comprehensive land use plan. And you look at all those types of uses, and what we really did was we took a look at that and talked about density with Luke Paris of, you know, what could be in there if we just talk about a residential, commercial, industrial type uses. You know, what could go out there? And again, you have to envision in this, when you look at those numbers you see at the bottom of that screen, of someday, 25, 30 years, you know, even farther out than that, of if this land would all start to fill in with some of the plan that you folks have put in place. If that would happen, you know, we talked about just boiling it down to say, well, how many trips at every driveway? If I added up every driveway for every land use that could possibly be out there someday, what are we talking about? And every little trip in and out, you know, was in a range of 250,000 trips a day. So if you just go from that though, and obviously we all do it, you take a trip to here and there, all in your same drive. A lot of things, you start here, you end here, so those kind of combine. But when you boil it all down and start to talk about the other network, Highway 28, G14 North, you know, things like that, other roadway network, we still believe out of all of that, you could be looking at a potential of 15 to 30,000 vehicles a day, which might, you know, go to a corridor like this. So it starts to show the importance of that need. You know, you identified it by saying, well, with land use, we start there with land use. We recognize we're going to have some sort of transportation infrastructure to go with that to support it. It's going to be successful. And again, so we get to that kind of a number when we start to talk about what kind of a demand could we maybe have on a road like this. Some other things we did real quick is we did a very high level desktop review and environmental type things. It's important to us right from the get-go when we start talking about a major corridor like this, that knowing at some point you might be looking at the type of funding resources, federal dollars, things of that nature, you're going to have to go through the environmental process. So what we really worked through with this was just taking a look at all the type of features in the area. We call it a desktop review because you're really just gathering all the information you can from all the sources that are out there documented online. But knowing what type of features and really the things that matter of, well, what do we need to avoid? Where are just some places, I'll point right to the middle there with the blue flag marsh. You know, it's okay, we're not going to drop an alignment for a road right through the middle of that because that's not going to happen. So we put together a lot of mapping of these things we can identify and again, help us to avoid these things as we look at different alignments. So between traffic and environmental, we've talked about the land use starting it. We take all these pieces and then this is where I'm going to turn it over to Andy and let him talk about things we've started to put together, but they all feed into design criteria for the roadway.
What's an NWI feature? What does that mean?
National wetland.
Okay, yeah, all right, thank you.
Could you hear Andy to answer that question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Andy Berg, Snyder and Associates, Aiken, Iowa. So now that we have all the traffic demand, traffic forecasting and modeling, you know, the next step is trying to get a better idea of what the design considerations are, design criteria. The ultimate goal there is to try and find a typical section that's going to fit the corridor, that's going to fit the traffic needs of the corridor and the community. But then also trying to find an alignment or alignments in our case here that are feasible, that fit with the overall intent of the project. So we went through and reviewed multiple number of different categories and tasks. The first that we try to classify is the roadway type, local, collector, arterial. We've kind of heard all those before. trying to define those based on the amount of traffic we have, the amount of trucks that we're anticipating are going to be utilizing this corridor, the access control, the intersection spacing, that type of thing. The next thing we reviewed is the overall design speed, what we're anticipating for the design speed of the corridor, the posted speed of the corridor. We do feel that there's likely going to be some type of a phased approach for construction, right? So we think maybe some of those initial phasings, the design speed or posted speed might be higher than the ultimate build out. So we kind of considered both of those in the development of the alignments. We reviewed the clear zone based on the different classifications of the roadways and design speeds, because that all kind of comes into the width of the right of way, how much right of way would we potentially need in order to meet all that design criteria. At the end goal, we're trying to find a typical section that works. And as you see here, here's a concepted typical section of what the roadway might look like. We would identify this as an arterial roadway. The ultimate build out is what you see here. So 4-lane divided roadway, 2 lanes in each direction. We do identify a right of way there that's able to accommodate the full build out. And that's really intended to accommodate left turn lanes, right turn lanes at prescribed intersection locations, potentially utility accommodations, meets the clear zone requirements. And then also considerations of some multimodal components such as bicycle or bike lane, that type of work as well. And this typical section gives you guys some flexibility of the overall phasing and staging of the project. If it's 2 lanes at once and then you add 2 later, this provides a little bit of flexibility in that. I know this exhibit's a little busy, a lot going on, but ultimately our next step was to establish some alignments. So what you see here is 7 alignments that we've had, all color coded based on the alignment number. Keep in mind on this, trying to give you a sense of orientation. The left side of the screen, the light blue line is Interstate 35. The right light blue line is Iowa Highway 28, and then all the intermixing alignments in between. Great Western Trail is the purple dash line that traverses north to south. The red shaped boundary is our overall study area of the corridor. And you'll see some black shapes within this exhibit as well. Those identify some special consideration resources, environmental resources. Mark noted the Blue Flag Marsh, which is kind of on the center of the screen. And then also the NRCS easement. It's closer to Iowa Highway 28. Progressing a little bit further into detail as we move west to east, to give everybody a sense of what's currently in the comp plan. Alternate 1 or the red alignment would be the alignment that's currently in your folks' comp plan. On the west side of the corridor, as Mark noted earlier, we don't want to get pigeonholed, if you will, to the study area. Right? We want to look big picture. We know this is likely going to extend to the west someday. So the connection to Interstate 35 and connecting or continuing to the west is of consideration. As you can see, a lot of the alignments converge onto Fillmore. Fillmore is an established crossing of Interstate 35, established right away. We did want to have one of the alignments considered in between Badger Creek Bridge and Fillmore, which is the yellow alignment. Do want to keep that up for consideration moving forward, but we do anticipate there's likely going to be some challenges continuing to the west on that alignment from a topographic and drainage consideration. Moving to the east, you'll see that all the alignments cross the Great Western Trail. We tried to find a pretty common area for that. We do see a ability to have a grade separated facility there, and we're hopeful that the Great Western Trail can combined with the roadway bridge over Badger Creek and have a grade separated facility there for safe pedestrian accommodation. Blue Flag Marsh noted that. As we continue eastward, you'll see a lot of the alignments converge on some established roadways and some established right-of-way that's out there today, such as 25th, Dubuque. The benefit there is that you have an established right of way, so it reduces the amount of impacts that are going to be needed. Right of way is still going to be needed for a lot of those corridors, but the amount of right of way is less. Embankment's already there, so you can reduce some of the overall project and construction costs if you're able to follow some of those right of way.
Both of those points that they cross the interstate, are both of those the legal distances between Bevington and Cumming?
I'm
Highways.
It's from the
The
next.
distance from the next interstate, yeah.
Either one of them would fit within the distances the DOT looks for. Yeah.
Good question. Continuing east, you see some black dashed lines there coming in from the north. Once again, we don't want to be too confined in our review. We do know that the North Avenue corridor does have some realignment studies that are happening as well. So we wanted to make sure we're incorporating some of those alternates in there with the alignments that we reviewed. And then continuing to the east on the approach to Highway 28, we do have two locations that we anticipate or that we reviewed on the intersection to Highway 28. The south one, which is the orange and purple line, that was a location between Delaware and North River. That's a decent location when in the connection to Highway 28. The concern there is continuing east. We have some challenges with Mid-Am's substation and the WRA facility there, so there's likely going to be some impacts with that one. You'll see a lot of the alignments converge on the Delaware Street intersection. We think that's definitely more favorable for the near term and the long term continuing east. Of course, the next question that everybody asks is what alternate's best? And I think Mark noted earlier, we're not really here to make that decision and in the overall development of the project, we're not at the point to make that decision either, but we understand there's got to be some type of comparison that can be made. So all the alignments are on the left side of the screen. We broke up certain categories to review and essentially rate each of the alignments keeping in mind that just because a certain alignment has more green dots than it does blue or than it does red dots, that might not necessarily be the best alignment there is, because there is some of these categories carry a little bit more weight, if you will, than others, depending on who you talk to at what point in the development process. But this is going to be a great tool to give you folks a general sense of what the potential challenges might be for each of the alignments. And also it's going to be a great starting point to inform the next phase of construction or development, which might be potentially a Pell study moving forward. Mark will touch base quick on the next steps to close out the presentation today. Thank you.
Andy, just a note, the red dot on alignment 1 under annexation, based on some recent conversations that the mayor had with some adjacent communities, that can probably go to a yellow or a green.
Awesome. We'll make that change.
Good job. So yeah, there is a lot of information there, and hopefully you'll have a chance, maybe at a time other than right at the meeting right now to go back and kind of glance through those. There's a lot there, but again, it was our goal to try to simplify it for you to just say this one comparatively to that one is more challenging or not. Again, early in the game, as to saying things are this is exactly how we ought to do it. And the main reason in that is, again, a lot of discussions that have to be had. I mentioned that earlier about, discussions, West One coming and then eventually with I believe the county, they're still working on their comp plan update, if I'm not mistaken, Luke. And again, the DOT early on, it's just having the discussion with them to see if just kind of an openness to the idea of another interchange out there. It was a good point of the spacing out there. I believe there's already agreement in place up at Veterans, up at West Moines, up by where the data farm is up there, just north of G14. And that, that's kind of I wouldn't say approved, but it's acknowledged that it's logical. It could fit in there related to his West Moines plan for Veterans Parkway. So again, is what we look at, we know there's some importance to actually another interchange point, because I think it's about 8-9 miles from 92, all the way up. So actually there are times we've worked on some things with DOT where it's almost like, boy, another place in there. I mean, they have opportunities to turn around for maintenance vehicles, emergency vehicles, but the opportunity for another interchange could be something that would be helpful. I know looking at that, talking about congressional awareness, all the way up to the national level. I believe, Luke, just a week ago, or I've lost track of time here, you spoke to Congressperson Miller Meeks about this, so it's on the radar, which is where we have to start with all these things. These corridor preservation opportunities. If I can, I told Luke I'd make reference to this, but your neighbors to the northwest, West Des Moines, I can remember being a young guy in traffic, and it was probably about 1990, 91 was the first time I saw a line drawn on the map by West Des Moines staff for what is now Veterans. I think at the time, they just called it the Southwest Connector or something like that. But that was kind of the first time I saw a map rolled out that had a line drawn on there that said, someday we're gonna do this. And here we are now, 30+ years later, and they've built some first pieces of that. So I give you that just as context to think about, this isn't about turning a shovel, a year from now. This is just thinking about how do we get this on the map, though, so that as you talk about things like annexation and development and everything else, this is out there, and that we don't have the later, oh man, how are we ever going to fit the kind of facility here we'd like to have? So the corridor preservation is important. I've talked some with Luke Paris about, the ideas of getting more of this land use. The city desires trying to work that into the MPO plan. You work with them and get that into travel demand models, because all of that is important as we go on down the road, if you will, of trying to get, when we start talking about federal level funding, things like that, well, is this part of your long range transportation plan? So that'll be a goal. Andy alluded to planning environmental linkage, a Pell. And this is really a new device, a new study we're doing through Federal Highway. They allow us that it can be a precursor to the NEPA work that you have to do. If we get into the actual, we want to spend the federal dollars to build parts, pieces of the roadway, and we have to do that type of action per the law. Well, Pell allows you to go in up front and do some more things to look at how these interrelate and get to more of a preferred alternative, if you will. So there talks to you a little bit about Pell, where again, we talk about this purpose need. Well, why do we even need this corridor? And then we start looking at those alternatives, which what we have done is tried to lay those out without saying, oh, number 5 is the best one. We've just said there's these different opportunities, because again, we haven't really had that public input yet that we need as we go through Pell and NEPA. But again, this is what you then work through. And the idea being is that Pell helps you work down to, maybe we can get that down to 1 or 2 alternatives that appear the best. And with those, we can take those right into the NEPA. We can start to get the federal dollars maybe in place that brings a more sizable budget to a project like this to, again, maybe building it in thirds, maybe building it in quarters, who knows, or just a stepwise process. But these are the type of things that are ahead and what we're going to be trying to do. These are a lot here, but just more on how a Pell study and a NEPA, again, we start to get the public involvement, get everybody to get input on the ideas you have for a corridor and a project. And again, these things are, can be real chicken and egg. It's kind of, does a development come along that, again, at one point we might think, oh, an interchange is not in our mind, but then all of a sudden something could happen where somebody's interested out there with some land and something sizable, and it can change everything. So it's kind of getting these things in place so that the opportunities are going to be there to coordinate, whether it be developers, property owners, the Iowa DOT, so these are some of the ideas we have on this, and really want to get it wrapped up. We went a little long here. It's a lot in a very short amount of time, but Luke wanted us to give you that kind of overview. I don't know if you have some other questions out of that. We can pop back to a slide or two.
It would seem logical that the more existing roadways we use, the less surprises we.
Correct. Yeah, and that was, Andy referred to that. See if I can get back there. Just with, I can comment, see if Andy has anything to add. Come on up here, Andy. But yes, we tried to look at several places that we're using some of the existing corridors, but at least there's some right of way, 60 feet, 80 feet maybe, that can be a starting point. Again, the type of alignment vertically with some of those gravel roads probably isn't as conducive to if we needed a higher speed roadway. But those are some thoughts. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot of them converging onto existing established roadways, and that was intentional. Just trying to get an idea, there's a cost that's associated with this at some point, and trying to reduce costs in everyone's best interest. So yeah, there would be less impacts with the understanding that there's still going to be some impacts related to those, even if it's on an established right away.
It looks like your focus area then is between Highway 28 and the interstate.
At this point in time, that was our main focus. We were just trying to look at that first stretch, if you will. Obviously, there's directionality off to the east, so it would still be, much more logical in the planning area for the community. At that point in time of continuing, and of course, that's why we said we focus so much on Delaware, because there's a lot of opportunity to go eastward. But right now, we were just between 35 and I-35 and Highway 28, correct?
Okay, so as we work this down to particular pair of corridors or whatever, we'll probably do that. We'll be mindful of possible connections to the east and west. Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah, I think that's really important. You don't want to develop a roadway, given the nature of it and the limited opportunities with all the land topography down here of major corridors. You don't want it to be a dead end, if you will, or a T. And obviously the utility of, if you're talking an interchange down at Fillmore someday, obviously, again, you don't want that to just be a one-sided thing. You want that to have connectivity to other opportunities, and again, much more utility for the interchange that way, important to the DOT and federal highway.
Mayor, a couple things real quick. So a while ago, I want to say quite a while ago, 2017, 2018, we contracted with Snyder and Associates to do a corridor study of Highway 28. If you remember that, we went through, determined where all the access points would be along Highway 28. That was a formal study, an engineering study that was performed that did not sit on the shelf and collect dust. We still use that today. In fact, there's one particular exhibit, all the access points, where traffic signal is going to be. That guides us, it guides developers, it guides property owners to know what to expect. This is just the first step. Our next step is likely some additional funds that would be requested from council in a future year to do that that next step of kind of zeroing in a little bit closer, doing a deeper dive, engaging some of those other parties that were brought up, some of the other cities, the DOT, Federal Highway Administration. So just so that council understands what to expect next. Also, I will tell you already, even though this had not been formally presented to council, we have already had some developers and interested property owners wanting to know where these alignments might go. So that's how this document already will be used in the future to give some guidance to people, to property owners that live or own property out in this area. So we don't spend money to have studies done, to have documents set on the shelf. They go to good use.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Chief Staples. Let's talk about animal control.
So today, we want to talk about animal control and the services that the city provides residents dealing with dogs and cats. First, we're going to talk about what we do now. We have some proposals, and at the end, I'd like council to give us some direction on how we should move forward. So what the city provides now is when people call the police or the city with stray dogs, somebody from the city will respond. If the dog is caught, Public Works comes and gets the dog, and then city staff, Public Works and City Hall staff mostly, try to find the dog's owners and rehome the dog. That happens between 30 and 35 times a year on average, give or take. The owner is usually found pretty quickly. Sometimes a dog might be homed at Public Works over the weekend, but typically they're rehomed pretty quickly. Usually no more than 24 hours. The city does not have a designated response for cats. There's no designated city response for wild animals that aren't sick or injured. If they are sick or injured and the police are called, we will go and figure out something to do. Sometimes there's a community policing role in what we do for wild animals or cats. An example of that was recently some residents had a beaver in their backyard and they couldn't figure out how to get the beaver out of the backyard, so the police were called and we got the beaver out of the backyard. And the beaver's still alive, as far as I know. We, as police department, issue municipal infractions for various dog offenses. That's what we do now, as far as stray animals. As far as other animal code violation and animal bites, we respond to vicious animal calls, animal bite calls. That is dog on human or dog on dog or dog on domesticated animal. We issue infractions for municipal violations for these codes. And if there's an animal neglect situation, we'll respond and investigate. And as you know from the news, we just did a major one with that. We have a dog registration process in the city and not many people use it. That currently, dog owners are required to register their dogs. Most people don't. In the past, historically, those dog registrations brought in about $8,000 in revenue. To reduce staff time for City Hall, we went to a online registration service, and that has decreased the number of registrations. As of right now, we have taken, for this calendar year, we've taken in $2,800 or so. Lindsay tells me that typically 80 to 90% of all our registration revenue is through before March 31st, because residents have to register their dog by March 31st. What trickles in for the rest of the year is those people who decide to do it a little late, or new residents to the city who find out that there's a registration process and do it. So it's anticipated that there won't be much more revenue in our current system the way it's done. We do require residents to license vicious animals. There are currently no known vicious animals that are, there are currently no known documented vicious animals in the city that have a vicious animal license. In my 10 years as chief, there has been only one time where a person licensed a vicious animal and that animal no longer lives here. Our proposal today is to eliminate the city providing the service of stray animal catching and rehoming. That is a significant, well, not significant, it is a counter thing to what a normal patrol officer does, and it is counter to what a normal public works employee does. And currently, public works employees are the ones that do transporting and dog feeding and watering and kennel maintenance. It's just not something that public works. It's not what a public works employee should do. So our proposal is to eliminate the stray dog catching and rehoming program. We would want to eliminate the impoundment of dogs and all the associated codes that we have on how we impound dogs in the city. Maintain the requirement for rabies vaccinations and those associated codes. Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but our research says that under state law, the only thing that the city is required to do is manage dogs and the rabies vaccination of them. Is that a fair way to say it? That's right. Okay. We would maintain the requirement for at-large animals that they're prohibited. You can't let your dog run at large. It's still illegal to do that. But if somebody does have their dog running at large, we're not going to go necessarily try and catch it because somebody calls the police and says, hey, I just saw a little white dog with brown spots running down my road. It's obviously lost. It needs to be taken care of. We're not going to, the proposal is we wouldn't do that anymore, and Public Works wouldn't do that anymore either. As a city, we would stop that. We would still do investigations for dog bites, vicious animals, and animal neglect. We would continue to respond to animal bites. We would continue with our community policing role of trying to help people when there are animal problems. Beavers in a backyard, a raccoon under a deck, those sort of things we would still do because that's what the police do. We have a contract with the ARL and we would want to maintain that. That contract allows a resident of Norwalk to take a stray animal and drop it off at the ARL. And then the ARL will work to rehome that dog. And if the owner comes and gets it from the ARL charges that homeowner, or that dog owner, the housing fee, and they can take the dog away. Then this ARL sends us, they're supposed to send us a list of all the dogs that get brought in and with the names of the people who own the dog or claim the dog so that we can charge them with having a dog running at large. In my 10 years, I have never gotten this from ARL, and I can think of 1 or 2 times where we have ever paid the ARL a housing fee. Doesn't happen very often. I don't expect it would increase much. Those fees for us to, those fees at the ARL are $35 for the first day and $15 per day after that, up to 7 days. The contract with ARL gives them the ability to adopt the dog out if the owner doesn't come forward. Pros and cons of this proposal, right? It would reduce expenses, right? We don't have these expenses necessarily. They're not hard. They're soft expenses. The salaries of police and public works employees to do this work are just embedded in the budgets. But Public Works is going to stop doing this completely on July 1st. And it would either fall on all patrol officers to catch the dogs and drive them up to the ARL, or hire a contract. Indianola and Carlisle both pay Kyakota and Indianola to do this. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's more than $4,000 a month for Kyakota to come and catch dogs and put them in the Kyakota kennel and try to find the owners. So 30 to 50,000 is what it would cost us if we could find somebody to do it. Kyakota has refused. I've called them a gazillion times and made multiple proposals and they never called me back. So I take that as refusal. I asked Polk County Sheriff's Office, who provides transportation services for other metro communities, and they declined because they're already providing that service for too many other communities. So at this time, I can't find a contractor, but if I did, it would probably cost us $30,000. What's the con of not doing this anymore? Well, there's reduced services for the citizens. A pro is there's a hassle to get your dog registered. If we don't require it, that hassle goes away. It's a hassle for the residents to do it, and it's a hassle for city staff. The con for that is there's a lack of registration revenue, but there's not a lot of registration revenue anyway. A pro for not having stray animal pickups is there's no need to hire the contractor and then maintain a contract and supervise the contractor and deal with complaints from the contractor when they don't do what they're supposed to do. And the con is that very occasionally I can imagine that somebody from the city is going to have to transport a dog to the area. A vicious animal that we catch, as an example. We're not going to keep it here. It needs to go there so they can use their expertise, and somehow we would have to get it there. That has happened one time in the 10 years that I've been here that I can think of. Another pro is that there won't be any city staff time managing the registration process. That is something that City Hall staff has to do. People come in, they have to gather rabies registrations. It's not a lot of time, but it is one extra thing that staff has to do that we don't need.
But if we're not changing the rabies code, then how does that change?
The dog owner is still required to have a rabies registration.
Right.
And if the police come in contact with the dog owner, we can check. The police can just check for the rabies certificate. And if they don't have them, then they can be charged with that. The registration process does automatically verify, but essentially that's all it does. And we can do that ourselves when we come in contact with those dogs.
And Chief, it's probably important to note that while we do check the rabies at time of registration. If that rabies, let's say somebody registered today, May 16th, and that rabies expires June 1, we don't check after May 16th.
My
And
own
we-
dog, yeah, my own dog was registered and her rabies registration or certificate expires in September. I don't re-register until March.
Right.
There's 6 months there. Registrations.
But we
Could be out of compliance, but it won't be, trust me.
We would still require registrations for the dog park,
Yes.
which would ensure rabies. Yeah.
There is a extra fee that residents pay if they want access to the dog park. That's something that city staff can manage. It's not a lot of people that use it. It's probably 20, 25 dogs a year, I think, register for that. So that's the proposal in a nutshell. Next steps, if council thinks that no longer requiring registrations and no longer providing a stray dog service as a pickup, stray dog pickup as a service, then we will work to, Jim, Lindsay and I will work to revise the codes to eliminate those things, keep the codes so that we can still do animal neglect, animal bites, vicious animals, rabies certificates still be required. It'd still be illegal to let your dog roam free. Leash laws still be there. Pick up after an animal after it does its business in somebody's yard. Those codes are all still be there. We just wouldn't be, as a service, trying to pick up dogs and find their owners. I will say that this is something that the city of Indianola has done. Talked to their police chief and he said, no, we don't have any police issues based on registrations not being required.
So I don't strive to model ourselves after any, for the record.
Yeah.
However, I'm not opposed to this. I would, however, like a review a year from its enactment to see if it has achieved the point.
Excellent. Idea. I would agree with that.
I would assume, Wayne, you would concur with the discussion.
So the vicious dogs, dog bites and all that, you'd continue to handle that the way you do now.
Yes, Jim and I have talked about a slight revision of the code, simplify it a little, but the process of police taking a report, an investigation being done, chief of police reviewing it, declaring vicious or not, the appeal process, all that would still maintain the licensing required of a vicious animal if they chose to keep it and confine it. The inspection by community development to make sure that if they choose to keep the vicious animal, it's still, the confinement system meets the code, building code, all that would remain, yes.
Basically, what you're looking at, you propose it's a no longer licensed dog. Right? And to eliminate the impounded dog under normal circumstances, or the strays or whatever.
Right.
If we would have to impound like a vicious dog, or say an unusual set of circumstances, then would we still follow the procedure like we do now?
Yes, so the vicious animal section of our code gives the police authority to seize. And what we would do is purchase an adequate kennel or take the one from Public Works, have it at the police station. And if we came in contact with a vicious animal that we chose to seize and take to ARL, currently, most of the time, the vicious animal is quarantined at the owner's home.
Right.
So we don't transfer it, but one time for sure, and other times that I'm maybe not thinking of right now, we take the dog, we would put it in the department pickup truck and drive it up to ARL and let them house it. All that would still stay because the vicious code section is not really going to change. Vicious dog code section won't change. Might be streamlined, but it won't be changed.
Well,
Yes,
outliers
sir.
here.
Mhm.
So you have dogs running around without licenses. And you really don't know who they belong to. But they're not vicious.
Right.
What do you do then?
Under this proposal, Nothing. We tell the person who's calling us that there's a stray dog running down my street to put it on Facebook, which they already do, and then the owners will come and get it. I mean, literally, that's how we rehome dogs.
That's what we've seen, yeah.
Now, we do have a chip reader, the city does, so if they've microchipped their dog, we can proactively return it.
This would be a follow-up to that question. It would be if you have somebody that doesn't want their dog back. They typically, they're morons, don't get me wrong. They take them out in the country.
Right.
But sometimes they might do it in town. Is there a difference between somebody, the dog runs out the door and it's running around, they get, they're trying to chase it down and as opposed to, I just dump it on my car and take off? Is there a difference in violation or conduct?
We have an abandonment code, don't we?
You'd have to establish who dropped it off, then you could have the at-large charges,
I mean, we
So
definitely
those-
could use the
those
at-large charges.
abandonment charges, things like that. If you can prove it, but it's hard to,
But there could be an
Hard to know
abandonment
what
charge. I mean, it should be a harsher charge. That's all I've said.
yeah.
Well, when we, assuming the council agrees with the proposal, let's look at an abandonment, look specifically under abandonment in our code section. If not, we can add that.
Yeah, and then, but I'd emphasize also, I think the difference between this and like if the council talked about it 15 years ago, it is Facebook. Clearly, someone loses their dog, everybody immediately goes and whoever finds it takes a picture and say, hey, look at this cute little puppy running around my front yard. And then somebody else says, hey, isn't this yours, Marcia? And Marcia gets tagged in and says, yes, and then they go pick it up. And it's, the mechanism there in today's technology.
And, so if somebody, let's say, a stray dog wanders in somebody's garage, they close the garage door, they've trapped it, they want to return it. They can't figure out in social media who it belongs to. That dog can be taken to the ARL by the resident if they choose to, and ARL will figure it out. And if nobody claims it, then the city will pay that bill, pay the kennel bill to ARL. That's part of our contract. If the owner of the dog isn't found, the city's responsible for the kenneling at ARL.
Well, I think we can give it a try and do evaluate that for a year. I tried for 15 years to get up maybe, but yeah, it got dumped on me, it got dumped on public works, and then it came back to me. So it's still the same dance.
At some point, I will say, as we grow, the city's gonna need to hire employees to do this. This is a struggle that all of the metro agencies are going through. Luckily for most of them, Polk County Sheriff's Office has solved their problem. For the time being. We didn't have that option. Warren County Sheriff's Office doesn't have that option. They'll use Kyakota. Kyakota has told me once their kennel is enlarged and built, their new facility, whenever that happens, they'd be more than happy to do it. But right now they're space challenged. It's part of the reason they didn't want to interchange. Taking Norwalk on over.
Someday when our budget can afford it. One of the things that I worked on years ago was a position that took care of that, but also handled all the complaints about the nuisances, also with parking. So it was kind of a lower level enforcement thing. But I thought that would be a good way to roll everything up together and make an effective use of somebody's time. Right now may not be the best time for that sort of thing, but
A community service officer type
Yeah.
position.
maybe in the future.
It's something Luke and I have talked about.
Maybe if this doesn't work out, we might look at that.
which I will say now might be a good time to point out the footer at each one of these slides that identifies that this is a based on House File 718. Being a part of the League of Cities Legislative Committee, one of the things that we have learned is both parties at the state legislature specifically understood last year with House File 718 that a property tax reduction bill was worth even the reduction of emergency services. Here's an example, not impacting people per se, impacting animals. But that is one of the reasons that this came up as opposed to having an added expense for doing animal control. That's why it came up as a reaction. And this is just one of many that council will have to deal with in the future, was trying to ratchet down some of those services that we provide.
So, taking it that council would be agreeable if at the next meeting, there was a proposed, code changes up
Yes.
for vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, getting into the meeting now. Item 5 is proclamations. Today we have National EMS Week being May 19th through the 25th. We have National Public Works Week being May 19th through the 25th, and we have ALS Awareness Month for the month of May. You can read those in the packet, and they will be posted on social media as they come about. Item number 6 is welcome guests and public comment. Thank you all for being here tonight, participating in your local government. We'll open up the dais for non-agenda items. We'll give you a 3-minute time limit. We can't take action on those tonight since they're not on the agenda. Also, if you'd like to comment on any item in the consent agenda, now would be the time. So any takers? Seeing none, we will move on. Item number 7 is our consent agenda. Tonight we have expenditures, some tax abatements. We have the May 2nd, 2024 minutes of the regular city council meeting. We have a renewal of Class C retail alcohol license for Gus and Lisa's Pub and Pizza. We have resolution setting the date for the public hearing on a proposal to enter into a general obligation urban renewal loan agreement and to borrow money thereunder. This is for the Highway 25 beautification project and public safety HVAC. A resolution setting the date of meeting at which it is proposed to approve a development agreement with Dunn Industrial Condominiums LLC, including annual appropriation tax increment payments. We have resolution to approve the sale of used or replaced items on govdeals.com. We have resolution to approve the purchase of a fiscal year 25 fleet truck using fiscal year 24 dollars to save money. We have a resolution to approve pay estimate number 5 to Vanderpool Construction for the Sunset Drive, Iowa Highway 28 and Chatham Avenue Improvements Project, which the lights are working now. We have a resolution to approve partial payment number 6 to Progressive Structures LLC for the Northeast Service Area Lift Station and Trunk Sewer Project. We have a resolution to approve partial payment number 7 to Thorpe Contracting LLC for the Wright Road Water Main Replacement Project. A resolution ordering construction of certain public improvements for the 2024 PCC street rehabilitation, approving preliminary plans and fixing a date for hearing thereon and taking of bids therefore. A resolution to approve pay estimate number 1 to Alliance Construction Group for the Golden Valley Drive Improvements Project. A resolution approving a 28E supplemental agreement for snow removal on Iowa 28 with the Iowa Department of Transportation. A resolution approving agreement with Advanced Problem Solutions for annual inspection and testing of city backflow devices. We have some resolutions approving pay estimates for the Norwalk Fieldhouse. We got 7 of those. And we have the monthly reports. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, so motion by Cool, seconded by Livingston. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Meineke.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item, that'd be 7Q is a resolution supporting the submission of an Iowa Economic Development Authority application to the Workforce Housing Tax Credit Program by Hubble Realty. So you want to take this for a little bit?
Sure. So Kevin Laurie, I think, is here. I've never seen you in person. He can maybe explain a little bit more about their application, the program, but they reached out to us several weeks ago. They're developing a multi-family development in Holland Point. So they'll have townhomes and apartments. But they are applying for a workforce housing tax credit program through Iowa Economic Development Authority. And the portion of the support letter that's being requested just includes the townhomes. And there is a piece in that the city that's where the project is established in would have some sort of contribution, and they have a minimum of $1,000 per unit for that. And we have a tax abatement program that is in place that the townhomes qualify for. So that's wrapped right into that. So we don't have to do any additional incentives or anything like that, but it is listed in the letter of support. So we're basically just supporting their project because we do need workforce housing. They're nice townhomes, and it'll be in an area that has a lot of new commercial development, and we really need additional kind of higher density developments in that area. So from there, I don't know if you have other questions maybe that Timothy could answer.
I was the one that asked for this to be taken out of the consent agenda because I wanted to discuss it. Could the representative from Hubble come forward? Thank you. And would you identify yourself?
Yes. Yep, Kevin Laurie. I'm a development manager with Hubble Realty, so worked on the multifamily side at the Mountain Point community.
Okay, good. The reason I wanted to visit with you is this would be a cooperative venture from the city to work with you and something that could be mutually beneficial to both sides. Okay, I get that. Now, we've been working with Hubble for a number of years. They normally do an excellent job. And they're usually pretty good to work with. And normally they always cross the T they're going to cross and dot the I they're going to dot. Okay. But we have a problem. And I'd really like Hubble's help to try to resolve it. There's a private access road that runs parallel to Highway 28, and that is on the west side of the highway. Starts up there in the area where the dentistry is. You know, and of course goes south to the police station. Now, the problem we've come across a couple of times is lack of maintenance on that road. Okay, it's in pretty bad shape right now. Now, when Hubble turned that over, I don't know exactly what the agreement is. But as near as I can tell, they left it to the property owners to maintain that road. Okay. There was no business owners association established that I know of. Okay. So the problem we get into is the north end of that gets a real beating. And it's been repaired and replaced a few times. Okay, so the way the thing sits right now, we'd be hammering that poor dentist to the people that own that building on that end. Right? Because that would be the property owner that would own that section of road. What I would like, since the city has been cooperative with Hubble, is that they would be helpful to us to try to find a way to resolve this. Now, I don't know if they can go back and take a look at the business owners associations, since they were parties to that agreement, right? Needs to be some responsible entity so we can touch them when we need something done. You see, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, those residential areas that Hubble owns also touch that street. Okay. So depending on how that agreement is currently written, Hubble might be responsible for repairing that street. So I would ask that you might go back and visit with the appropriate people in your organization. They can sure contact me. They're welcome to, or probably, you know, administration under at City Hall, and try to help us to get this problem resolved. Because it is a problem. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, that particular issue, you know, I'm probably not privy. I'm probably not the right person to speak
That's
to that, but I can get you in contact with our land development manager, VP. I think you know Caleb Smith. He's been in here several times. So I'll make sure he gets in contact with you and work out the details of that agreement.
Okay, that
Can
would
contact
really
me.
be appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, did you have some questions?
Yeah, I wanted this also split out. We had a good meeting with various people from the Iowa League of Cities last week, and we've kind of internally thrown around a couple times ceasing the residential tax abatement. And then after talking with a lot of different cities over last week, found out that most of them already have, and they're wondering why we still even have it. For the tax abatement. It's minor, it's not very much. I don't think it materially changes anyone's mind whether they're going to move in here or not. But, we're kind of, like I said, still debating, and I don't know, when is your target date for construction on this?
This one, I mean, it could be as early as, fall 2024, but it would, if anything, it would probably be spring 2025.
So we're already, by signing this, we're agreeing that it's going to have a tax abatement 12 months, 18 months, 2 years out. And I don't see why we would do this to tie our hands if we're debating on several different things, possibly making the tax abatement only if it's the highest level streets, for example, the highest level of whatever. In no cases apartments, some of these different things we're throwing around. And I'm not sure why we would do this now and tie our hands with what we want to do in the next year. Now, obviously, we have developers that are already in here and, you know, we're gonna have to grandfather some things and make it work. But I think doing this now, it just shoots ourselves in the foot, trying to figure out what to do from here. I know we need we need workers, good workforce housing. I'm just not sure that this is our answer.
Holly, does this project qualify for LMI?
The townhome portion, I know we talked about potentially using that for the apartment portion. I don't know if the townhome would it.
If LMI could qualify, if the sale price of the home meets a threshold that a lending institution, this is, I don't think there's an easier way for me to explain this, so I'm just gonna try my best. If the value of the home sells at such that somebody within the LMI category, so 80% of median household income could afford the home. And just don't quote me on the numbers, but if I would imagine with our income in our community where it's at, we're probably talking $225,000 to $250,000 home. If the townhome would sell under that, it could qualify for those LMI funds.
The reason why we still brought this letter forward, I know we've been kind of internally talking about changing the abatement policy or potentially doing away with the residential side of that. But I feel like we're a ways away from cleaning that up or figuring out what those abatement changes might be. We've had a lot of different ideas of what that could look like. Some think we should get rid of it completely on residential. Some think maybe just on certain types of residential. Some want some stipulations to it. So we have some conversations coming to council. And we thought maybe we would start that discussion tonight, but it's actually going to go through a couple of our committees first, and then we'll come back with some ideas and options of what to amend within those policies. So for a project like this, since we've been working with them for a while on this particular development or any other developments that were already kind of in the works that already qualify, in those amendments that we would bring forward, we would have some termination or some deadlines language put into those amendments so that certain projects that started before the start date of these new policies would still qualify. We have several that are in the works that would still need to qualify anyway, that they base the project knowing that they would get this tax abatement on it. So we would put that language into the amendments.
And so this, if we were to agree with this resolution, it would be really our promise to comply, right, with the terms of it. Is it tied to Hubble? Is it tied to 58 townhome units in Helen Point? So that if Hubble modifies the project, we are no longer bound. Or if Hubble sells the location, we are no longer bound.
And I might refer to Jim, but we do specify that in the resolution and in the agreement, the letter of support that is specified 58 townhomes, Hubble, and then our standard tax abatement is how we are contributing.
Right.
Essentially, maybe.
And, you know, my hesitation is twofold. I have almost the entirety of my career on city council been against tax abatement and have tried in the past to bring it up and terminate it and have been soundly shot down. So no, it should be no surprise that I'm not in favor of tax abatement residential in general. And so that's part of my hesitation. However, currently, we do have tax abatement. We do, that is what we allow. The other part of my heartburn is some history we have had with Hubble where certain changes have been made to code or zoning, certain expectations have been raised or put forth, and then they haven't been followed through with. So I want to make sure that this is binding and, you know, if we agree with this, then, right, 58 townhome units in Holland Point by Hubble Realty, not a conversion to apartments, not a conversion to condos, not a conversion to 52 townhome units, but this is tied to 58 townhome units in Holland.
Yes, we can limit, I believe it does limit that. Remember, our obligation is for providing tax abatement for those 58 units, right? Because for them to be qualified under the state program for these tax credits, a city or municipality is required to contribute $1,000. That's straight out of the Iowa Administrative Code saying that they have to contribute $1,000. The rest of the program is it's funding from the state providing tax credits. So the state will hold their feet to the fire on the rest of the proposal. We don't review the proposal, approve it or anything like that, but the council certainly, it would be limited. Our obligation would be limited to what is stated here, which is those tax credits, 58 townhome units in Holland Point near Norwalk Central.
Right. And I understand that we don't determine whether or not what the state does in this program. I understand that. But this does come back to us eventually with a site plan and all of that stuff, right?
That's right.
And if there's a variation from this, I'm just being clear. If there's a variation from this, then it will not have my support. And at that point, I will feel justified in saying, nope, you guys changed it. You understood ahead of time what our position was, and I'm no, just going forward.
Is there another way to fund this other than tax abatement? But don't we have low-income funds available to?
That was the LMI I asked about.
Oh, I missed that. Okay, I'm sorry about that. And why we can't use that?
Well, George, as of right now, they already qualify for tax abatement on the townhomes. So instead of us having to do another type of incentive, they already qualify for that. So they could still walk away from here if we don't approve this support letter, and they would still get the tax abatement as of right now.
Unless we made a change that we would all decide on at a later date. And this locks us in at least foreseeable for 2 years, and all of our competing communities have already ceased it. I did not realize that. And I think we are probably past due for a change.
George, to answer
As
your
a
question there.
transition, could you fund that with LMI and allow this to go forward if we change the rules?
I think the obligation of the city under the administrative code is simply to come up with $1,000 per unit. How the city funds that, I don't think they care other than the obligation.
So do we have to detail it?
Well, that's what I was thinking is maybe we could change the resolution a little bit and basically we could say through the standard residential tax abatement program or by other means.
And a time limit?
What's your probability of getting this? It's a point system.
Honestly, pretty good.
Good.
I would hope so. And again, because it's for the townhomes only. Are there a few other comments I can interject here at this time? So about the LMI funds as well. Workforce has a different connotation, sometimes means percentage of AMI. This particular, for the purposes of the IDA, it's a limit on the project cost. So if you keep your project cost per unit down below 290,000, which this one will, then you qualify for it. That's why we're applying for it. And as Holly mentioned, because we're already eligible for the abatement, there's nothing additional at the moment that the city of Norwalk had to do. So basically, this process is confirming that, okay, with the current code that we qualify for the abatement, that's already the $1,000 per unit for the townhomes. Then we get from the state $15,000 per unit to help fund these. And now, to us, it's just, okay, our projects qualify for that already. It just makes sense. It's leaving money on the table from the state. help the project go, yes. So the abatement is great, but it's more as a tool to help us get that tax credit, help this go, so. And this, again, this is not income restricted. This is no section 8, so you can bring up LMI funds, but I'm not bringing that up. So this is just for the abatement portion to kind of match this definition of workforce from the state.
I just figured we had funds that we could use for that. But like Jim said, any other way.
You
we
can,
fund it,
but we figured because abatement was already there, eligible, it covers, so.
So in theory, if we change the law, the
If we do
code,
change the abatement,
We
we'd have to
could-
come
we
up
could
with
still-
58,000.
we'd have to come up with 2,000 someday.
And it doesn't need to be, it's not a lump sum. I mean, the way the abatement's drawn out anyway, it's over 5 years. This isn't, we're not asking for something lump sum right away. I mean, you know, as it's currently written, that would spread out across 5
We're
years.
just trying to figure out how we, as other developers come in, well, we want the same abatement, and this section, they still have it. Why is that? We're gonna have this argument and it's gonna
Yeah, and
be
at some
ugly.
point, we have to draw a line in the
Yeah,
sand, right?
that's what I
But
mean.
as it currently stands, this is allowed. And I don't know that we draw a line in the sand for something that we may do when we haven't voted on it.
So your timeline, then you're looking at as a 5-year timeline, is that what you're looking at?
It just anytime during that timeline, that, yeah, you're willing to make that $1,000 match, 58 townhome units. And I'll also mention, you did mention the zoning issue. We do need, a letter from the city approving the zoning that we already have. So, we're not planning on changing it. I'm sorry if something's happened before, but that's not
I understand, and I'm not holding you responsible. I'm just making sure
understood.
the record's clear.
Totally understood.
So I think that your proposal, Jim, is a good one, to create a high quality, to the standard residential tax abatement program or some other funding, right? That gives us the freedom to, as we're committing to providing the money, but it gives us the freedom to grandfather it in if we change it or find some other way to do it.
Well, we know we need affordable housing. They've got a project that they're already building there. And so if we nail it down, identify it as that specific project, that one, to them, right? I would probably feel more comfortable with that. And, like we were discussing there, the option on funding. I don't know the tax abatement's going, I haven't
we don't.
decided,
Just our
But-
competing cities.
but it could. And any council in the future could decide that, even if we don't, right? So having an option in there would be good.
Or could you keep it just for economic development type projects like this and then scratch?
Well, you'd have to look at, there's ways that you could do it. We'd have to, that'd be by the other means or something, but that would be a later discussion. Go for it.
Is there like an average sale price of one of the units?
Well, these are actually, they're still rental units. They're just townhomes. So they're still for rent.
Rental unit?
They're rental townhomes, yes.
Do you have an anticipated rent charge like on a 3-bedroom?
Wait a minute.
Well,
I
yeah.
thought we were talking about building and selling stuff.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not currently slated to sell. They're rental.
Yes, right.
So the state restricts rents. For this project?
No, they restrict the project cost of the project. So they're restricting, to keep it below certain project costs that can construct it. So. for
So if I
units.
rent the property, I have to qualify.
No. Like I mentioned, there's no income restrictions on these. I know the workforce connotation is kind of confusing in this particular instance. These are not income restricted. So there's no AMI checks or anything. It's just standard market rate rental.
It's not rent restricted either.
No, it's not.
No, it's just cost of building restricted, right?
Yeah.
Can't go over 290, is that what you said?
Yeah, again, the workforce, I understand it's a confusing connotation. It's just the project cost to construct. it.
I think it's.
Part of my confusion was, I thought townhomes were owned. I thought condos could be rented, apartments could be rented. I thought townhomes were owned. I have no understanding of the difference between any of these units anymore.
Yeah, well, everything can be rented. People can build a single family home in the middle of a neighborhood and have it be rented.
They don't typically get a tax abatement.
They would.
Yeah, they can.
Anyway, I just don't like rentals getting taxed.
But, you know, I think it'd be good to promote home ownership. I think that'd be a good. thing.
Oh, that would be great.
And that's what you want to try to do is get people into houses, right?
But
So
not
they own,
these.
they belong. But yeah, but not, I guess I have no interest in setting up a bunch of rental, you know. I really don't. That's me.
So I've heard add in behind standard residential tax abatement program or some other funding source. As a change to the language. That sound okay?
Mhm.
Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the resolution as amended?
We have public comment after that. I know
And-
there's somebody here who wants to make a comment. They put motion to me,
Okay,
so I don't know when you want to do it.
let's do it now.
Okay.
Public comment. Sorry.
Maureen Winslow, 3616 Prairie Thirds Drive. I had not intended to comment on this, but since Ed brought it up. Hubble turned over that street to the owners of the buildings, that private drive that you're talking about. Late last fall, it was kind of thrown in our lap and told that, you know, we had to have some suckers step up and become part of the board. So I was one of them. So I can give a little information to that. So when Hubble had that zoned as commercial behind us, we had to share in repair of that road. And so when it got turned over and made into residential, it has now fallen on all of the owners. So by rezoning that and kind of what Hubble has asked, it has then fallen on business owners in Norwalk to solely care for that road. It was always a shared expense because they were supposed to have turn-ins into their commercial properties off that road. And so now, because it was kind of put in our lap last fall, we have taken the reins on fixing the lamps. The light bulbs, you'll notice, are getting changed. We have hired a company, Matt Foster's company, a local kid, if any of you grew up here or know. He is going to be coming in redoing the boulevard, the daylilies that have been left for years and never maintained, all the flowers in front. And so we as owners have been paying into that HOA for, well, our building 20 years. And so finally, just having taken over in 6 months, we're finally getting some things done. So I would like to just put that out there as we're approving more Hubble things, that this is what's falling on the people in your community that are contributing, giving back, living here and owning buildings and things. They kind of make their own rules and pull out and then kind of lay it on the owners. We were always shared in those things and we were fine with that. But at this point, it's kind of been, hey, we're building townhouses behind you, no more turn-ins, so it's your road. And that was given to us in that shape. So we are working on it. We want to make it better. We don't like it, but that's what was dropped in our lap. So I think it's important that you know that, especially Ed, I really appreciate as a business owner that as a council, you guys care. To be honest, we didn't realize you even were kind of aware of what happened there. So, and it did just kind of land in our lap. I mean, we just got a letter that it's getting turned over and here you go. So, we are talking with an attorney to try to understand it better because I'm a dentist. This isn't what I do. Anyway, just
Sorry about
figure out what our stuff is, but yeah, we don't like that the road is that way, but literally we just kind of got a hold of all that stuff recently. So that's just thought you guys should have that information.
Yeah, thank you. Any other public comments?
Seems like we might not be ready to move forward on this thing.
I'm not. I'll be honest
Is it
about it.
Just hearing.
A point of order, is it better to have a motion and have it defeated or not a motion at all? Is
The
it
same
clear for
difference,
it's legal?
right? We could
It is
table
the
it.
same difference, but if it's tabled, at least there's a decision on it, so it doesn't get brought back up within a year.
Well, you can ask for a motion for it. If it fails for lack of a motion, it fails.
Okay. Yes.
And it's more important on zoning items because we like the zoning
All right.
items when you can't.
I
bring it
just
back
wanted
after
to
a
make
year.
sure.
Yeah,
Will you
So-
finish that sentence, Jim? It's more important on zoning items. Why?
because on zoning, there's a time limit before it can ever come back again.
But on this, there's not a time limit on when it could come back again. Am
No,
I
if it changes, then,
finishing your sentence?
yeah.
I will say that just simply from a staff perspective, when a motion is made it passes and everybody has a chance to vote. From our perspective, then we know very clearly where each council member stands on the issue. I can only imagine that from a developer's viewpoint, they would feel the same way to at least know what that official decision is from each member.
Right, so if there's no motion, it seems to me that that's
Really
pretty
clear.
clear. If there's a motion, and it fails, it seems to me that's pretty clear. If there's a motion to table it, then that seems to me to leave the question.
All right. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the resolution as amended? Hearing none, I'll say it's failed. Oh, sorry. All right. Moving on. Item 8 is old and new business for consideration, discussion, and possible action. Item A is a public hearing regarding the fiscal year 2024 budget amendment. We'll open up the public hearing at 7:20 PM. So every May, we conduct this type of hearing to amend our budget for the year. I believe Gene is going to explain that every item within the budget amendment has already been reviewed and approved by City Council. This public hearing is to give an added level of transparency and review to see the comprehensive impacts of budget amendments. So Gene, you're on via Zoom.
I am. Thank you,
All right.
Mayor.
Floor is yours.
Thank you. I apologize for not being able to attend in person. Is my volume okay? Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're really coming in.
Maybe too loud? Tone it down.
Oh, you're good.
Tone it down a bit? Okay. As the mayor mentioned, we do this process every year without fail. It has to be completed by May 31st of each fiscal year. The time lapse between budget prep, approval, and the end of the budget fiscal year can be 15 or 16 months. This process is required to obtain authority to expend funds not previously anticipated under the original budget. Amendments are expenditure driven. Cities are not required to file an amendment if there's additional revenues received. However, I prefer to show those increases because sometimes those revenues are the reason for the increase on that expenditure side. Grant funds, donations, those are examples of that. There are 9 expenditure categories, so the state lumps our departments into categories. Public safety is our fire, police, and building departments. Public works is basically your streets. Health and human services. Culture and recreation is library and your parks and recreation. There's a category for community development and economic development. General government, which is administration, the attorney, and our IT department. Debt services, capital improvements, and business type funds, which is basically your utilities, sewer, water, stormwater. As mentioned, the City Council has approved the amendments throughout the year. I have listed most of these in my agenda statement, excuse me. A few examples are if we hire new staff. We hired 3 firefighters, a police officer in August. We took a library part-time person to full-time in January. Oftentimes, our capital improvement projects get delayed or they cross over 2 fiscal years, and adjustments need to be made for that. There's also emergency repairs if we have water main breaks. Last year, we had a tornado, so we had to adjust for those expenses. These amendments do not change the tax rate. They are paid with increased non-property tax revenues or reserves. If there are any, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Questions from council?
No,
Lindsay, go ahead, sorry.
we've already discussed most of the things that we're supposed to do.
That is correct. Yeah. Lindsay, have we received any oral or written comments on this?
We have not.
Okay, do we have any public comment?
Motion.
Second.
Not yet. Still
Oh,
on public hearing.
sorry, I skipped ahead. My apologies.
We're ready to roll.
That's still ready to go. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public hearing at 7:24 PM. Item 8B is It's a resolution approving the fiscal year 2024 budget amendment. So Gene just went over the budget amendment. These are the adjustments for the revenues and expenses, and in the packet, there are explanations for each of those items. Gene, you got anything else?
I do not.
All right,
Thank
any
you.
discussion, comments from council or public comment?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Livingston. Which one? Was it?
Oh, I give it to Baker.
Second by Baker. Any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Cool,
Yeah.
Livingston.
Yes.
Meineke,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes. All right, motion carries. Item 8C is resolution approving the fiscal year 2024 amended budget transfers. So Gene, also, I think you went over the budget transfers for the fiscal year, and those are also in your packet. You got anything to add, Gene?
I do not. Just a separate, I just said I do not, and then I'm going to talk. We just have to show, just like any other department, transfers are, if we're taking money from one fund to another and we amend that throughout the year, we have to go through the same process. And we have to say where the money's coming from, where it's going to, and what it's for.
All right, thanks. Any discussion, question from council or public comment?
Motion.
Motion by Livingston, seconded by Meineke. Any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Cool,
Yeah.
Livingston.
Yes.
Meineke,
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 8D is public hearing on urban renewal plan amendment for the Norwalk urban renewal area. We'll open up public hearing at 7:26 PM. So to be able to expend TIF funds on a project, we need to add that area to our urban renewal area. So for this amendment, we're going to be adding the Highway 28 entry corridor and the Dunn Industrial condominiums. Gene? This you? Or
Yes,
is-
and yes, I can answer this.
Awesome.
This is for the Fairway property, the Dunn condos, and the Highway 28 property where the fence or the wall will be located. And even though that area does not generate increment, we still can add it to our urban renewal area because it's an economic development project and utilize TIF to pay for that project. So that is why that project is being added.
All right, thank you. Lindsay, have we received any oral or written comments on this?
We have not.
Okay, any public comment? Yeah, go for it.
Jared Houston here from Des Moines, not be just used my twin brother Ryan. You can kind of know I'm the better looking one. Holly, remember that? Because she confuses once in a while. I am the developer for the Dunn Industrial condos here, not to bring up tax abatement after previous comments. But this is actually going to be for commercial project here, industrial commercial project here. Couple things I want to point out with this project is we are building large units, 1,950 square feet, 32.5 wide, 60-foot depth. The reason I bring that up is other similar projects are being done in Waukee and West Des Moines. Those are 1,200 square feet, 1,500 square foot units. Those target kind of that man cave, basically, I want to say it. Someone just wants extra space. We're building a larger unit on purpose. We are targeting business owners. We want businesses to come to Norwalk, businesses to invest here, businesses to locate here. Also, I should point out, this is for sale, not for lease.
Picked up on that.
We are building this project here to encourage businesses to come here to locate. We haven't even started pre-sale. Actually, we're starting pre-sale marketing probably in the next 2 weeks or so. I've already had 2 conversations in the last 3 days about possible people coming in and buy units. So just a few things I want to point out about this project. Again, commercial for sale. And again, we are targeting business owners, not just someone who wants to have a man cave there. If anybody wants to buy one as a very large space to get away, feel free. I also take the sale and the profits and pass the tax abatement along to, the current ownership. Any questions you guys have, happy to help answer, but I just want to give a little insight into the project here, some of our thoughts as the development group.
Awesome. Thanks. Everybody else, thanks.
More questions?
Mayor, I did have a question. A nearby investor in some of the storage facility, that are being leased or rented individuals that want to store material. They were a little concerned with this facility as a competitor, but based on what you just said, I don't see why they would have that concern.
Yeah, right. And I'm happy to speak to that too, if you'd like.
No other public comment. We'll go ahead and close public hearing at 7:29 PM. Item 8E is a resolution for necessity, to declare necessity and establish an urban renewal area pursuant to section 403.4 of the Code of Iowa and approve urban renewal plan amendment for the Norwalk urban renewal area, this Highway 28 beautification project, down industrial condominiums. We just had a public hearing item on this item. This declares the necessity of the URA and approves the amendment. Gene, anything to add?
Just that the URA process is kind of twofold. We add the property and then we establish TIF districts within that property. So the URA is basically the entire city. And then we have these TIF districts. This one establishes the Fairway TIF district. So even though we added the Dunn property, that TIF district will come at a later time. So this one is for Fairway specifically.
Okay. All right.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, so I got a motion by Meineke, a second by Livingston. Any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call roll?
Jean, I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump in there. I think we're still on the resolution for the Highway 28 and Dunn Industrial Condos, and you said this was for Fairway. So I think you were on to the.
Oh, was I onto the ordinance? I apologize.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. I'm still good to move
So the
forward.
motion was on E and the second was on E.
Yes. For
Okay, I apologize.
resolution to declare necessity.
Right.
We got a motion in a second.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Meineke.
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 8F. It's first reading of an ordinance providing for the division of taxes levied on taxable property in the May 2024 addition to the Norwalk urban renewal area pursuant to section 403.19 of the Code of Iowa. So this is Fairway and the Highway 28 beautification project. So now that council's declared necessity and has approved the URA amendment, this item amends the ordinance to allow using TIF for both Fairway and for the Highway 28 beautification project. Is that right, Gene?
That is correct. Sorry, I jumped the gun there a bit.
You're good.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, got a motion by Baker, second by Livingston. Any further discussion or public comment? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call a roll?
Councilmember Livingston. Yes. Meineke,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 8G. It's public hearing regarding resolution of necessity for the Ridge at Echo Valley Reconstruction Project. So we'll open up the public hearing at 7:32 PM. So this public hearing is being held so council can get public input on the reconstruction projects for specifically Blue Stem Road and Prairie Sage Drive. Turn it over to Wayne.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe council is well aware of the project. We've been following our code of ordinances for following the assessment procedures. Part of that process is the agenda item before you tonight. Public is invited and then council can consider the resolution necessity.
All right, thank you. Lindsay, have we received any oral or written comments?
We have, they're all in your packet. There were 13 written comments. I'd say the consensus for all of them was to reduce the amount of assessment due to the life of the road, age of the road, I should say.
I can also confirm that communication.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes. Could you come up and state your name and your address?
I'm not gonna read all these. Yet, promise. Those are the public records.
Read 'em. We got it.
Those are the public records
Yes.
that I requested. So my name is Deb King. I live at 3713 Blue Stem Road. And just thank you for letting us have a few minutes. What I'd like to do, since this council wasn't in these roles back in 2004 and 2005, when this all started, I'd like to just take a couple minutes to level set the facts. Because to be frank, I don't think many of them are in dispute. And I'm sure you've all heard bits and pieces. You might have even had bits and pieces yelled at you. It's been a heated topic amongst folks. And I'd just like to lay out the facts and have that serve as a basis for a discussion. To help get an accurate picture of the facts, I did request some records from Lindsay through an open records request. She was great about providing me what I needed. And I'll go ahead and cite to some of those records where it's appropriate. First, you know, I'd like to talk first about how did we end up with blacktop or asphalt in the ridge? At the time the ridge was developed, what I can tell from the minutes from September 2004 was that the standard practice for new developments in Norwalk was to use concrete. I don't think that's really in dispute. The September minutes indicate that the developer brought in some folks, had a conversation with the then city council, and proposed to build the road to quote, rural highway standards. The council was in approving that request, was careful to clarify that no precedent would be set. They didn't want to be bound to do this again. And they went on to discuss their concerns, which was clear that they had, because there was discussion about whether the city should ask for an agreement that they wouldn't be responsible for the road. So that's September of 2004. So I really don't think it's in dispute that we're just a little different. At that time, you were using the city was using concrete or requiring the use of concrete, and they made the decision to not require the developer to do that. I also asked the city, as part of the records request, whether there's been any new developments since the ridge was opened in 2005, where the new developer was allowed to use asphalt. And the response that I got through the records request was no. So just to summarize, concrete was required before, concrete has been required since. We really are just a little sliver of time where it was different. You know, you've heard, I think, some of the discussion about a bond. I had some questions about the potential for a bond. My understanding is that there was a bond. I asked whether there was any inspection of the road prior to the bond expiring. The bond is like an insurance policy for a certain period of time, that if the developer didn't build the road to the standards, you know, you might have some recourse against the bond for the expenses of repair. My request to the city about, tell me, you know, about the bond, tell me whether there was any kind of final inspection of the road done prior to the bond expiring. The response I got that there was that there was no evidence. They couldn't find any records of an inspection. The other fact that I think, how many of you have driven through that area? Okay. Have you driven? It's been repaired at least twice. So I don't think it's very arguable. I think it's not in dispute, let's say, that the development didn't last long in good shape. It's been repaired several times. And I just want to point out, I guess, that when the ridge was developed, this wasn't a situation where you had homeowners buying 40-year-old houses on 40-year-old roads, where they had a reasonable expectation this road would need repaired soon. These were all brand new houses in a brand new development. I'm not a construction expert at all. I tried Google. It seems like there's a variety of answers as to how long roads last. I'm sure there's people here that know more than me. What I saw is that residential roads paved with concrete, particularly low traffic areas like ours, can last 40 to 50 years. We've already had 2 replacements and we're sitting at like 18 or 19 years. So I don't think it's very controversial to say that the road didn't hold up as we had hoped. We have a lot of pictures. I didn't realize that I could bring them and show you. We would be happy to send those in. What you will see, there's been phases of patching and repairing. At times, there's whole areas of the concrete. They patch them down, they flip up again. You know, it's been, I'm sure the city can attest, it's been a challenge to keep the road in good repair. I've heard some speculation that there may be discussion about whether the fact that the residents of the neighborhood water their lawns, and could that contribute to the problem with the road? I guess I would discourage you from speculating unless you have concrete evidence of that. And one of the reasons I would say that is our covenants require, I would encourage you to go out and look. Our covenants require us to drain our yards to the golf course and to the creek. And so, you know, we can always guess what caused what, but I think it's much more likely that building the roads to rural highway standards had an effect than yards that drain to the golf course was the cause of that road decomposition. So here's where we are now. Those are the facts that I don't think are very controversial. Now the residents in the Ridge are being asked to partially fund the reconstruction of the roads. They're being asked to pay between $8,500 and $22,000 per person. In addition, they'll incur the cost to move mailboxes, take out irrigation. They're asking for a 5-foot easement. They'll be within about 20 feet of my front door with a gravel road through my yard to drive. The assessment my understanding is the assessment that's being proposed is being done pursuant to a city ordinance, which I requested and Lindsay provided to me. I guess I just want to note that I know you guys have precedents that you need to follow and you want the folks of Norwalk to be treated equitably and fairly. But that ordinance doesn't say what percentage you have to charge. You have some discretion here. And because the Ridge was treated differently in the approval process, we were the failed experiment, I would encourage the city to use its discretion to consider other options for a fair and reasonable resolution. I do believe there are other alternatives that are fact-based that would be fair to both Norwalk, the general population of Norwalk, and to the residents in the Ridge. So I'm going to stop there and let some others, I can answer questions if you have them, but let some others talk about some of those options that they would like to propose. Thank you.
Thanks, Seth.
And I have all the records. Lindsay sent them all to me. If you have any questions about what's in the minutes and my questions and the answers, she would have them all. Thank you.
Yes. I was, just to let you know, I was told that there was going to be one person that was going to be speaking and representing the neighborhood. And therefore I gave her, let's see, 7 minutes rather than 3.
I'll do
So
one.
I am okay.
I can do one because I'm the specific guy. Is
All right.
that
Go for
okay?
it. Yes,
Okay.
state your name and your address.
My name's Gary Ellis. I live at 3516 Blue Stem Road. And just to quickly follow up on Deb's comments, I had submitted a specific proposal to in our minds, and I know there's several neighbors back here and they could speak beyond me, specific to what could be possibly assessed to the Ridge residents relative to this project, knowing that taking some random number, not random numbers, but conservative numbers relative to normal street life. Let's just say it's 40 years. Okay, our streets are 19 years old. Okay, you take that 19 divided by 40 based on the fact that this didn't make it to half its life expectancy. That could potentially reduce the 15% assessment down to 7.125%. Given the life of our street versus the average expected life of a concrete curb. So I would respectfully ask for council consideration on reducing that to 7.125% that was submitted in my written comments, and maybe some of my neighbors submitted something similar as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to answer questions if you have.
Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah. You guys can start making your way. You don't have
Yeah.
to wait to be called on. Just be orderly, but make your way.
I'm Deb Baker. I reside at 3628 Prairie Sage Drive. I'll be very brief. I understand and respect the logic of the current position on assessments. It has worked in the past since there's never been a situation where the street failed so early compared to the expected useful life. Good leaders make policies all the time at some point that get changed or updated because there is either new information or knowledge or a different circumstance is now in play. I think this situation is clearly an example of a new circumstance and learnings that may necessitate the need for an updated policy on the assessment, which I would respectfully request. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, anybody else? Okay, we'll go ahead and close public hearing at 7:44 PM. Item 8H is resolution adopting resolution of necessity for the Ridge at Echo Valley Reconstruction Project. So we just had a public hearing on this item. This declares necessity for the reconstruction project so we can spend borrowed monies on that project. It was brought up during the public hearing about irrigation. So as a matter of record, I'd like to point out that I believe the streets in question were constructed to the standards of as of the construction date. As the road was designed, I can't imagine engineers contemplated an additional 4.2 million gallons of water in a 6-month span between April and through September that would be used to irrigate the lawns of the residents in the area. And respectfully, I understand that any sump pump or eave spout that may drain backwards, but your front yard's drained to the street. That's 4.2 million gallons in approximately 6 months every single year. I drove the streets a couple of days ago, noticed that the areas where the street is currently failing is right where the curb and the asphalt meet, which is right where any runoff from irrigation is going to flow. I believe that 4.2 million gallons of additional water flowing on and under those streets per year directly reduce the lifespan of the streets. And I've talked to an engineer about it, and he said most definitely it's contributed to that. And that 4.2 million gallons is an average of the last 5 years of usage. So the process of doing an assessment project is very structured. This is done to ensure property owners that are being assessed have adequate notice and information to understand the project. I'm going to discuss several options in a little bit. Right now, I want to make it clear that any changes to the project as currently proposed would require council to deny this resolution. Changes would then be incorporated into a new project whereby a resolution of necessity would come back to council for that consideration. So I think council has 3 options for this item. You can either move forward with the current project and get that project done. Number 2, council could direct Wayne to go back to the engineers to modify the project to reduce the assessment, something like not replacing the cart paths, which I hear are in decent shape, and sidewalks could significantly reduce those assessments. 3, council can punt this project to the bottom of the list and direct Wayne to find a couple other projects to complete, and we'll revisit this when it comes back up to the top of the list. Wayne, do you got anything to add?
I'll add that the engineer, Jeff Rouse, WHKS, is on the call. If council has any engineering questions related to the project. Directing the engineers to redesign it to try to save the trail. We don't know if that's possible. We'd have to look into that. It might take some rework of the design. It's something that wasn't anticipated. I think you've explained the options very well. Nothing else.
Okay, thanks.
I do have a question for the engineer.
Okay.
Would it be common for a development with $1 million homes, even 20 years ago, not to have irrigation? And would the street have been required to have under street drainage as our streets are, what this is going to be proposed now? I cannot think or possibly imagine 20 years ago, very luxury homes not having every single one having irrigation, just like ours has now. Would the engineer?
Yeah, I can weigh in on that. Unfortunately, 20 years ago, I wasn't in the profession, therefore don't really, can't speak to the standards. All I can say now regarding the current situation, nor could I weigh in if homes, I think it's a subjective in nature to say if homes would, have irrigation. I assume they would, which I think is kind of what you're getting at.
But I will say that now, you know, standards now, it's been my practice my entire 16-year career to put subdrain under roads along both sides, and that this road does lack that. What standard it was built to 19 years ago, I unfortunately can't speak to, but it's a standard that is well adopted now to put subdrains on both sides of the road, which this road I think has sporadic subdrain if the as-built records are correct.
So using 2020 hindsight is how we come up with this. We changed our policy.
Yeah, I mean, I think specifications are concrete and fluid. And what I mean by that is, you know, we try and make good specifications, but as materials and technologies and knowledge changes, they do change. SUDAS, which is a pretty common, SUDAS and Iowa DOT are two very common standards to build to, would likely, you know, encourage subdrain. The wording will never require it, but you know, you look at any interstate plans and road plans, it's very common, and something that is just always worth your bang for your buck, for the most part. Now, there's a lot of geotechnical. The one thing I will say is there's geotechnical research that you can do to try and get away from that, but that's usually ends up paying for the subdrain. So you just put the subdrain in, if that makes sense.
I have a question for Wayne. Many of the letters that were written, I think the first letter that I received, I assume it's true for everybody, but I don't know, with a proposed formula was from Mr. Ellis, and then several letters after that had the same formula, and which is great. But each letter says that the assessment percentage of the project to residents is 15%. When I know that when Lakewood was done, for instance, the percentage varied. I don't remember why, but I know the percentage varied. Does the percentage vary in Echo, or is it the constant 15%?
The homeowners are assessed for the curb and gutter, the driveways, sidewalks, and if there's a sump pump connection. The percentage changes if the other items in the project change. So the numerator always stays the same. The numerator is curb and gutter, everything I mentioned. The denominator is everything else in the project. If we have water main in the project, sanitary sewer, non-assessable cost. If we have a lot more non-assessable cost, then the percentage being assessed goes down. Not because we're assessing less, it's just the percentage goes down because we're incorporating other aspects into the project.
So there aren't those other assessable costs in the ridge?
Correct.
And so it's a consistent 15%?
I'm sorry. There's, other non-assessable costs. There's not as many non-assessable costs in this project.
Okay.
So on Golden Valley, I think it was 13%. That's because we added water main into that project. That's non-assessable cost that drove up the cost. So the denominator in the formula went up. Numerator, the assessable portion of the project stays the same regardless of where we're at.
I think one thing to point out is that the assessment amount was not arrived at by going at the start of the construction, say, okay, we're gonna make this 15%. 15% came as a result of the total cost and expenses. I think per individual lot, it's gonna vary between 15% and you know, each individual lot isn't paying exactly 15%.
All right, and that was part of my question. Is it in fact different per lot, even if 15 is the average? I'm just trying to get that fact straight in my head.
Yeah, because the amount that they're paying is isn't based upon 15%, it's based upon footage, road frontage, and items like that. The cost of the approach, the cost of each approach is different depending on the length of that approach.
Right.
Items like that.
So that affects the total cost, but does it change the percentage that they're assessed of the project? May not be asking this the right way.
Yeah, 15% is probably an accurate amount for the entire cost of the project versus the entire individual assessments added all together, right? So if you take it as a group, it's 15%.
Okay.
But each individual property is going to vary
Okay.
depending on the size of the yard.
That's what I was trying to understand. Thank you. Then here's thank you, Jim, I appreciate that, and Wayne. So then here's my other question, maybe, Jim or Mayor, based on what you said. So if we were to say, we want, the assessment percentage to be different, can we still pass the resolution of necessity for the project? And can we still, or do we have to start all over?
The resolution necessity sets the maximum amount. But as far as changing if the council wanted to reduce it in the future, I think there's enough stuff that's gonna have to go into that we probably couldn't pass this when we're doing start the process, so.
Okay.
You have changed the ordinances.
Yeah, see, the other problem is we've got an ordinance that binds us to an assessment. It doesn't bind us to a percentage amount, but it binds us to what gets assessed. Do you understand what I'm saying by that? There's an ordinance out there that says 15% has to be assessed. And what it says is that these items are assessed to the individuals.
Right, and in this case, that averages to be about 15% of it.
That's correct.
Tracking with you, thank you. I'm a lawyer, not an application.
Wayne, is there the number of 40 years for a residential road lasting? Is that, I mean, again, I'm learning a lot. So is that a pretty common number?
I would say that's a common number. You're not gonna get 40 years without doing maintenance. You're gonna have potholing, patching, maybe some overlay work in there. But as far as getting to a full rebuild and reconstruction, 40 years would be a good number.
Yep.
I wanted to say a few things. First of all, I appreciate the civility of the speakers. Appreciate the fact that they came forward, offered logical discussions and points of view. Sorry, Mayor. I'll try to lean into the microphone a little bit. I appreciate the civility of the speakers tonight. I appreciate the way they presented information and in a constructive way. Okay. I was disappointed by the conduct and the statements of some of the residents at the public meeting. Okay. I think that's uncalled for. The staff does exactly what we direct them to do. They don't come up with these ideas. They're not harebrained things they grab and make up on their own. These are things we ask them to look at. Okay. Comes from us. Now, if there's a problem with a staff member, that's the guy you take it to right there in the green shirt. And he'll do an investigation and he'll see if there's something wrong being done. And if there is, we'll take care of it. But as a former staff member of this community, I can tell you that I never appreciated people trying to make innuendos about members of the staff. Okay. That didn't work out very well, especially when it wasn't justified. Got that off my chest. And the other thing is, I'm not really interested in changing the process that we're using between citizens, right? I like to treat everybody the same. That said, okay, I would favorably look at perhaps tabling this issue for now to see if it could be studied and analyzed to see if there's a way to engineer a process that maybe could exempt some of those things, whether it's the sidewalk or whatever could be done to be able to reasonably reduce those amounts and still have a good project. Because ultimately what we want to do is put a good street in there. I think everybody wants that. Okay. Question is being able to find a little common ground so people believe they're being treated fairly, and yet that street's being accomplished. Now that street leads nowhere. The only people that street benefits are the people that live there. It is not a thoroughfare for us. Okay. So the reason we're trying to improve that is really quality of life for the residents that live there. I would hope they would all keep that in mind. That's why this came about. Okay. Now, that said, I realize that there are three different options, like you laid out, Mayor. You know, we can do it, we could ram it through, you know, probably have disappointed people and probably have a bad work environment for the city employees that are trying to put a good street in. Okay. That's probably not gonna get us where we wanna be. We could not do it at all. We could say to heck with it, right? We're gonna spend our money somewhere else because we've got plenty of good places to spend it. But I think what we should do is we should table it. We should ask our engineers and our staff to take a look, see if there's a way to be able to implement this project in such a way as to reduce those funds that would be required from the residents, right? Some of those things, if they could be spared from the project. Maybe then we can get there and people will feel pretty good about the process and how we got it done. Interested in being fair with everybody, not interested in changing the rules. There are no special people. Okay. Everything applies the same to everybody. That's the way I feel. So thanks.
I'm not interested in tabling it. We've spent months on this already. And there's no reason for me to believe that if we table it and do some more investigation and come up with some different numbers, that we're not gonna have to spend months on it again. I'm not interested in doing it. That's my opinion. I appreciate that. I appreciate that the road was not built to the standard that we certainly expect roads to be built today. I appreciate that. Like I knew what I was getting when I moved into my house. Y'all knew what you were getting when you moved into your homes and when you've moved since moving into your homes. I appreciate that. That's my turn to talk.
Yeah, that's good. Go ahead.
I appreciate that. I think Lakewood Drive was one of the first projects for this process to be implemented. And the residents in Lakewood had many of the same complaints. Not that the road had been built, had such a short life, but when that road was constructed, there was no zoning, it was unincorporated. Houses, every single house on my block has had to be mud jacked or had anchored walls come in or something at our own expense because of the way the homes were constructed, because there was no, what I would say now, good oversight. And when the legacy was built, the legacy, every homeowner, when we got assessed, said, our roads were fine until you built Legacy City and you let all that water run down the concrete into our streets and it totally crumbled underneath the underneath structure. So I understand the differences in the arguments, but I don't appreciate the distinction. Or maybe it's the other way around. I understand the distinction in the argument, don't appreciate the difference. So my position is I am not interested in tabling this. If there were some subjectiveness in the formula, I would say go back and reevaluate and see where we can give and take. But the formula that's been applied to each of the road reconstruction projects since we started this has been the same. And I don't believe that in the middle of this project is when we change the way we do it.
I would say, we had a reasonable expectation of what we received when we moved in, because like Deb said, everything was new. We would expect it to remain good and working order for 40 or some years. If we moved into an existing home that had problems or wasn't even a part of the city at the time, I guess that would be a different circumstance. a rural highway, or what was the term it was used? It doesn't seem like it's residential concrete at all. I thought Deb King had a very good argument. I would like to see us proceed with this. But at the same time, I think there are some ways, either by saving the cart path, putting the easements on the other sides of the street. I'm one of those that would have the easement on my side of the street. I think that would be fine if it would save a substantial amount of money. I don't know how we're able to do this though without additional time. But if we're not interested in tabling it, I think we're kind of pinched. I'm not sure how this is going to work out. It doesn't seem fair. That's it.
I guess part of what I'm not disagreeing with you. I guess part of what I don't understand is we've been having this discussion now for months. I don't see that we're ramming it through, or we're pinched.
We had one public meeting and then we've had this. When were the other months that people were brought in?
We had another meeting where other people were present and made comments.
The
We've
other
had
meeting?
letters go out before those meetings.
There was not a public discussion other than the first meeting, which I was here. They were disrespectful people. Absolutely. I agree. The problem is there was a misconception thinking that they were taking their arguments to Wayne. Wayne is the engineer. He was simply trying to explain how we're going to put in a street from A to B and explain it. People wanted to argue with the entire process that had to do with us, that we did not ever have a meeting with them or notify them of. So we have not actually been talking about it for months with these people. You and I have been talking about it maybe for weeks.
We had a city council meeting several sessions ago where several members from the Ridge came and spoke, and we discussed it at that time. Now, I understand we didn't have this public hearing, but to me, the opportunity to be heard, to express ourselves. Again, I'm not saying, I just have a different perspective on the terms of ramming it through and feeling pinched.
Okay.
I appreciate your point of view, I really do. And I share that in terms of applying the policy consistently. Okay. How about you other two? We haven't.
I said the two new members are looking at each other, going, we're gonna have to talk pretty quick. So Jackie, I gotta say, I don't feel the pinch because I wasn't around, I guess maybe for some of that. So from that perspective, but just and I can almost defer to Brian representing the neighborhood of what he would like to do as well. But at the same time, I think we have the process, what we do established. I think if you could go back 20 years and redo this, it would never have been done that way. But it apparently met standards at the time, whatever standards that.
20 years ago,
Pretty-
with the
pretty-
council that was here, it might have been done that way.
Yeah. And
That's
you
right.
know, I went out and drove. Depends if it's it's horrible. I asked about that. I hadn't been out there. Also out and drove it. It's bad. So I can see why you want to put a new street in. If I was a homeowner there, I would say, get it done tomorrow. Let's get this over with. And that'd be my attitude. My attitude would also be, that's fine. You're gonna assess this, be done with it. Put it behind me. Life goes on. That'd be me. That's the way I kind of look at it.
I also want to thank people for kind letters that assume we're all on the same team. So I've been always thinking about us all being on the same team together to try and figure this problem out. Thank you. I think we only had one letter that was, maybe two that were unfortunate. So I find myself very sympathetic to the stuff Deb talked about, put myself in your shoes, just disappointing and hard. I don't think I'd want to pay for it or fully. So I'm very empathetic to that. I'm empathetic to Jackie,
the assessment that she had to pay and people of Golden Valley had to pay and, you know, can you all hear this okay? It's a little hard when you're looking at one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Norwalk and they're getting, you know, something that could be perceived as a deal. That makes sense to y'all? I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying that that can be a perception. So it's like, there's all this stuff that we're balancing and I find myself warm to it all. So I would, and because this road is primarily benefiting the residents, and I think they are maybe asking for a hold, and Brian, you're saying, hey, let's put I would be tempted to vote on the resolution and not approve it, and then figure out if we can do some different things. It'd be great to get through this with as many happy people as possible.
So I'm curious about what that looks like. It is a practical matter. If we vote this down tonight, then what is the practical timeline for when this comes back? 2 months, 6 months, 3 years? I don't know. I'm asking the question.
I don't know. I don't, it is, I've talked to a lot of people and they all want the road changed. They want the road that we wanted 20 years ago. And I guess if we're given the choice of, this is it, take it or leave it, I think I have to say, we want to take it. As far as
I take it.
it sucks. Here's
Okay.
your crap sandwich and we move on.
Okay, and I appreciate that and thank you, but I guess I'm asking Wayne or Jim procedurally, what timeline are we talking? Because right, if we're talking about 6 months, maybe y'all want to wait 6 months. If we're talking about 3 years, maybe you definitely don't. I don't know the answer to that.
You're closer to 6 months. We'd have to go back to the engineers and probably negotiate an amendment to have them go back. Probably get additional survey on private property on the other side. Do another design. They've already completed this design. They'll do a redesign to see how we could stage it and save part of that trail, see if it's possible.
And we pay for all this, right? I mean, so while we're saving money, we're increasing the cost.
There would be some cost, yep. Right. We'd need probably additional easements from the neighborhood, which I'm hoping they'd all be agreeable, knowing we're trying to, again, then we're all on the same team as Councilmember Brown said, so. There's some negotiations that have to go on, but you're closer to 6 months. It's not 3 years.
Okay, so I guess I would like, right, I'm happy if Brian speaks for you, if somebody else has a different opinion. I'm just curious what you guys.
Yeah, well, that's the public comment. Come on up. State your name and address.
Brian Kratzer, 3817 Blue Stem Road. We've lived there for about 4 years. We live right on the end cul-de-sac. And when we moved in, I mean, ever since we've been there, we've had to scoop mud out of our driveway from people, friends coming in from out of town. And it's like, this is kind of embarrassing to live in this community and pay $18,000 to $20,000 a year. And we all pay more taxes than most anybody in this town. And that road has been, supposed to have been done, what, 3 or 4 years ago, I think. I'm not for sure. But why does these people pay the most taxes in town and put off to the last, and then we have to pay for our own road? I mean, the taxes are unreal out there compared to the rest of the town, so.
Were you aware of the taxes before you moved in?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, I knew they were high.
okay.
Yeah, I was very aware of it.
Yeah.
I knew they were high.
There's certain arguments that I'm very sympathetic to.
I knew they were high.
I think the question we're trying to point out right now is, do we want to move ahead with this or do we want to risk it being tabled? I think that's what we were trying to get a feel, so I'm not just speaking for you.
What's the association with getting the appeal?
You gotta come up here, Donna.
Come on up.
Right.
Yeah.
Hi, Don Paulson, 3603 Blue Stem. I guess we want the road. And I've heard Jackie, I've heard all of you, I've heard a couple of the things saying table it. But I think, is there a possibility that you could look at this assessment and look at it at a different level? I think that's what we're asking. And if you can't, and it's gonna take 3 years, then we would say no. I think it comes down to the assessment. Obviously, it's always money, but for these people, it's the assessment that we would like to talk about.
So yes, in 6 months.
So I guess then, I don't know, can we get a vote?
Right, Ed, did I say that correctly? We could reevaluate the cost, but it would take about 6 months to do it.
And we have higher costs.
You know, I think one thing to point out is that if we're talking about a different amount of assessment, 6 months is if we find a different way to do the project that has less cost that would be allocated as special benefit cost to the owner, to the owners, right? So we're talking basically the trail. We can figure out a way to design the program, the process to not destroy the trail. Well, then the cost of the trail would not be assessed against the owners.
Or at least as much. as
If we're
the-
talking about a process where the council says, well, we just think we should change it. We should change the amount of the allocation. Well, it's gonna take longer than that because then we're talking about changing the ordinance through the city. The city council would have to look at the ordinance because the ordinance says that these costs should be assessed. If they want to change the process and change the ordinance somehow to not assess those costs, well, then that's a different process. If the process is reanalyzed and suddenly, and Wayne comes back and says, hey, we can't do this construction without destroying the trail. We've looked at it, we just can't get it done. And the council's not interested in changing the ordinance, well, then you're gonna have the same assessment after that study's done. And maybe it's more depending on inflation and estimates of cost. And the cost of the city's gonna be more because they've paid the engineering costs. I think that's a fair summary.
Doesn't state 15%.
Stand up to the mic. It's being recorded.
The ordinance does not state 15%. You're not gonna find a dollar amount in there because legally you don't make assessments based upon a percentage amount. The assessment is based upon the street frontage. That's why some people are at 8 and some people are at 20. And the formula is those private improvements, the improvements that the code says should be assessed. These private improvements that should be assessed the property owner when a road construction project such as this is being done. It doesn't say, you know, these need to be assessed against property owner unless the council decides they should do something different. So if we want to make something different, the council can decide to do something different, but it's got to be done by changing that statute first.
I get that each house isn't 15%. We get the 15%. We're just trying to figure out where did that number and why can't that number fluctuate? That's all.
Okay.
It's just, but the quickest way to do this would be to table this meeting. Have them do an assessment. And if we can do it differently, right? Then we go ahead with it, and do it different, and we're able to accommodate something without changing the rules.
Unless it doesn't work out like that. And
Well,
then
and
it's,
if it
and then
doesn't,
it's
then
twice
we've
as
got the
long and
same-
twice as much money.
Then we got the same decisions we got now.
I agree, but that's what I'm asking. That's my question was for their input on that issue, right? I know nobody wants to pay this. I get it.
You bet, yeah.
But do we want to risk it? Do you want to do it now? That's what I want to understand.
Eric F. 3706 Prairie Sage. And first I want to thank Wayne for the information that you gave us at a previous meeting, but also what do you think the likelihood is? Because we're trying to make a decision, want to have as many facts as we can. What's the likelihood that the cart path could be salvaged, without cost going crazy? I mean, so.
That's a good question.
I would-
It is a good question.
I would defer to the engineer work on the project, but I would say, I know it'll entail more easements and more encroachment on on the other side of the road. It's gonna take some collaboration.
We don't have sidewalk.
Hold on, hold on.
So I can speak to that. So as far as I'm confident that I'm sorry I can't give you an exact percentage, but I am confident we could design the road so that the trail could stay. The one thing that I want to mention is, you know, if there's portions that need to be replaced, I'm sorry, I'm not up to speed on it, on the code. Like if there's a bad panel, now's the time to do it. But in general, the road, I'm very confident the road can be designed for the trail to remain in place if residents on the opposite side of the road are willing to work with easements, because we'll now need to move further away from the trail to accommodate emergency vehicles and traffic during the course of the project. So I can't speak for those people, but I'm confident from a design standpoint that the road can be designed with the trail remaining in place. I hope that clears that up.
That's super helpful.
Thank you.
Deb Baker, 3628 Prairie Stage Drive. I think what I'm hearing you guys say and what I would like to know is, of the two choices, we do it now just the way it is, or we spend this 6 months and listen to the engineer. Can I ask? I mean, I would like to see a hand who wants now, and we're paying what
You
we're
actually
paying.
can't, but I can. Can I get a hand?
I would like for them, I would like for us to, okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I'm asking her question. Can I get a hand? Raise a hand. Who wants to do it now? Hold on.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry, the engineer. I fully admit that my and I want this to be public, my stance right there does mean that our design fee is increased. And so I know that there might be a conflict, and I just want to be very upfront about that. That now means but with that said, I'm happy both ways, obviously, but I just wanted to be clear about that.
Thank you.
Eric Heft again. No, nothing's free. Wayne, if you could have some idea, because when we're talking about, curbs, all that stuff, and the cart path, how much is the cart path? I mean, how significant is that? Is that, half of it, 10% of it? I mean, if it's an insignificant part,
Fair
then,
question.
It was compared to, that's my question, compared to, don't you have to pay for easements on the other side? I mean, I assume the easements must be cheaper than the golf path. I assume.
Mayor, if I could say something, I really caution anybody even answering those kind of numbers, because I've seen too many instances where staff attempt to give some kind of an idea, but folks hear different things. And I don't want to be back in this situation, but you said, so I just caution everybody from giving too much information.
That number is identified in the preliminary assessment plan schedule
Right.
for the trail.
But for moving the easement to the other side of the road, the cost of those easements and other costs that would pop up because of it.
Right. If I could add, we already have an easement going through, projected based on the plans that we discussed, but, through us already, that's not on the cart path side for quite a bit of prairie sage. So I don't know how that impacts anything either, but just FYI.
Thank you. Those are all questions that our engineers, how much more land do we need and how much trail can be saved? I can tell you, I know at where the trail intersects the road, that'll have to get taken out and rebuilt, because I'm sure it doesn't meet ADA compliance today. That's just part of the, we'll have to put in truncated domes, for example.
Yeah. Greg Thorson, 3717 Blue Stem Road. And I appreciate doing a vote, Jackie, but I feel we're taking a significant risk that this doesn't happen for 3 to 6 to 10 years. For some of us to hope to save a couple $1,000s with a lot of unknowns. All of these are unknowns. And I respect your comment, Luke. For someone to say something and then it comes back on them 6 weeks or 3 months from now, it's just not right. So I personally think we're taking a lot of risk, and I thank you for allocating the city money for the 32 or 36 homes, whatever they are out there. We desperately need this road. I think the sooner the better.
Thank you.
And I don't want to spend the money either, by the way. None of us.
Is there a show of hands? Is there a show of hands, the people that just want to go forward right now? It's done before everything.
But are you, how many, is it by how?
You gotta come to the microphone.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Just the show of hands that, do we want to risk it? If we table it?
Can you comment
Do we want to move forward right now, the way you've seen your amounts, you've seen everything? Do we just want to go forward and get this over with? Thank you. I think it was pretty representative.
Yeah. Any other public comment?
Just.
Yeah, come on.
3817 Blue Stem Road, Brian Kratzer. I don't know how this is done, so this is a question. How do you guys decide who pays for the road out in the front of in the front of their house in the frontage? I mean, does everybody in this town, if you redo a road on the other side of town in front of apartments, does these people have to pay for that street? Or how do you guys decide?
There is a formula that's set in our code, and it's up till now, it's been equally applied every time we've done it to every road that we've done. There's been 5 or 6 roads since I think it was put in. There's one being currently redone in the Lakewood neighborhood. There's been 2 others in the Lakewood neighborhood that have been previously done. There's been one on the south side of town that was done, and all those assessments were equally applied based upon the expenses. And when you say pay for the road, you keep in mind when we're talking 15%, the 15% of the total project cost is in this case, what is being said is being assessed towards the land, the property owners. Those items are like the curb and gutter. Your approach on your road is when the road gets ripped out, part of your driveway is going to be, so it includes your driveway assessment and it includes if you had sump pumps hooked up, those type of hookups, but those are privately assessed things. And it's sidewalks. Now you're a little bit unique because you've got the large cart paths in your neighborhood. Whereas other neighborhoods might just have a normal sidewalk in front of every house.
Or one neighborhood didn't have any sidewalk and we put one in.
That's right. You know,
So basically.
so yours, but the amount that's being assessed to the private property owners or what the council decided in this policy are actually private property expenses.
So mostly the higher tax paying people, the bigger houses in the town is the ones that's usually paying for all their own roads instead of the lower income.
No, everyone is, no, you pay the privately assessed stuff based upon your road frontage. And yeah, so necessarily, if you've got a bigger yard, your assessment's probably gonna be bigger because you take up more road space on there. But the rest of the citizens in Norwalk are paying for the road itself. So everybody else, I mean, when citizens here say, we don't want to pay our private costs and we want the public, the city to pay for it, or what they're saying is we want all the other taxpayers to pay for it.
So
And which is, okay.
The road is 3.6 million.
Right.
And we aren't paying.
But what I'm trying to say is, people that pays, you're having them pay is the people that makes or has the biggest houses in town, that pays their taxes. So it's how the formula goes of who pays for
No,
the
the
road.
formula is very basic.
So
Formula's very
everybody,
mathematically.
so everybody in town.
Same
has
as
to
in
pay for
Lakewood.
the road.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Everybody in town has to pay for the road no matter where they're at.
Correct.
Really?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's what I was my question.
So 85% of the cost of this project, everybody else in Norwalk will pay for that 85%.
Thank you.
And your road's a little unique again because there's no through street. It's just, primarily for you and the visitors to you.
Right, but they're also paying more than taxes in this town, I guess. A lot of income, private tax for, property tax.
Yes. Any other public comment?
So I have a question here before we move forward.
Go for it.
Okay, so if we pass this resolution to the Senate, which is before, whatever you call it, it's got to have 4 affirmative votes, right?
Correct.
If it doesn't get 4 votes, it doesn't make it, and the project died for now.
The assessment dies, yes, so the council have to decide whether they can fund the project elsewhere, some other way.
Okay. So I'd like to be able to count noses before we do something. Is that legal to get opinions?
Can you move up to the mic? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I'm sorry. I said I would like to get a little nose count before we move forward to get different people's opinions. Now, if we take this thing and table it pending a review by the staff, right? That could be done with what, 3 votes? to table a motion, three votes would carry it, right?
Yeah, you could table it.
Okay. But to pass what's in front of it, it would require 4 affirmative votes. If we don't get 4 affirmative votes, for now, the project is dead.
Understood.
Okay,
But if you chose to table it and it failed, that just means it still has we still have a resolution to pass.
that's true. That's
I
correct.
just want to make sure that was clear.
So the order I'd like to proceed in is I'd like to first entertain a motion to table. See if people are interested in that. And if they're not, if there aren't 3 of us interested in that, then we could move forward with the matter that's before us and see if 4 are interested in continuing. Does that make sense?
And the purpose of tabling would be to adjust the engineering of the project to see.
To see if it's possible that those areas that require an assessment could be reduced.
And you can make the motion that you want to make. If you want to make a motion to
Yes.
table and see if there's a
I just,
affirmative response.
I just wanted to clarify what the table was
Right.
for.
Okay.
And that table would then be 4 or 6 months added on engineering costs because WHPS would have to redo things.
To study it. They'd have to
Yes.
study it, see if they can re-engineer it, see if it's possible.
So that's what the table would be for.
Yes, sir.
Do you want to make that motion?
Yes, sir. I make that motion now. And I would ask for a second.
Does anybody want to second the motion? Okay, so that one died.
So I make a motion.
So so the recommendation for the recommendation in the resolution is to not do the project. Do you want to change that recommendation and go to, I believe it's option 1, which says proceed with the project as planned? Or do you want to accept the recommendation that's in the resolution of not doing the project?
I think,
Well-
I think if you just make the motion to pass, then it's gonna take 4 positive votes to pass.
Okay,
If it doesn't receive 4 positive votes, it fails.
okay.
Brian, just to be clear, you're saying you think a majority. I mean, we saw what we had, but
You're
you're
talk to other people as well that are not here.
and saying. Cause I feel a lot of mixed,
Trust me too.
okay. And you're one of the ones too that's saying, we don't like it, I don't like it.
But our options are minimal. I think it's better than getting new recommendations or a year from now with higher costs.
Okay.
I
Well, I feel a lot better if, I know you're not speaking for everyone, but if you're speaking on behalf and saying, hey, we get all these letters, we don't like it. But we still would like, more of us would still like to move ahead and get this road built.
That's my opinion.
So I would make a motion to adopt the resolution of necessity. I lost it.
Yeah, it's weird.
For the ridge at Echo Valley reconstruction.
Okay.
I would second that.
Okay, so I got a motion by Livingston, second by Cool. Do we have any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Minneke,
Yes.
Baker.
Yeah.
Brown,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. I don't know about you guys, but I could use 10-minute recess, please. Oh, we're recess.
We are back in session at 8:42 PM. Item 8I is resolution approving engineering services for the Main Street Water Main Replacement Project. We continue to actively replace water mains in the Founders District. This helps to improve the reliability of the service to that area and increases the safety of the area since fire apparatus can then hook up and actually use the new mains. Wayne, anything to add?
No, sir.
Any discussion, comments, questions, council?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Livingston, seconded by Cool. Any further discussion or public comment? Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Meineke.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 8J is a resolution approving a parkland dedication agreement related to Circle Apartments Plat 1. So this is for the park that will be constructed at the Legacy Circle Apartments, and it indicates that the public will be able to use that park. Luke or Jim, anything to add?
I'll start. I think Jim might want to add some stuff because he did work on the agreement. So he's got more of those details. The concept for the park here is that it would be contained in a easement on the property, so it will be owned by the apartment complex. But that there would be a public park easement placed over top of it. So it's a unique thing. We've not had that before as a park consideration. It would also include the construction of amenities through the area. So rather than getting raw ground that it's just graded out, they would build the trail. They show a pickleball court, some of that stuff. So it's just a unique thing that we've not done. They did go to the Park and Rec Commission per how our code is. When you don't follow the standard stuff, they've got to go to Park and Rec Commission to get their opinion. And then P&Z does their recommendation and then forward on to you. Park Commission was in favor of the concept. I do have just some notes here from Robin, who I think is on as well. So if I miss something, she can jump in. But overall, they like the concept of the access easement as a unique parcel. They thought it was a positive that it would continue to add to our tax base. So because it's owned by the developer, they will pay taxes on it as opposed to being a park parcel. Let's see here. They like that. Thought the access was good. Access to the park was great for the public. There was some hope that maybe there would have been 2 pickleball courts, but walking through everything, it seems like there's only really room to fit the one. And did acknowledge that there was detention areas within the park easement that is used for stormwater detention of the site. So that is the gist of Park and Rec's comments. Again, this is part of the bigger whole thing. So then the whole site plan did go to P&Z and P&Z, and you guys obviously council. So P&Z did recommend approval of the site plan, but they don't technically look at the park agreement, but they knew that the site plan included the easement in it. So I think that's tantamount to their agreeance to that. What I missed, Jim?
I guess the other thing I'd say for, perhaps the newer council members are that when this property was purchased, there was a parkland dedication obligation on that, and that relates to the larger PUD, and it all kind of got put off to the circle. So there was a certain amount of acreage that was required to be dedicated to the city as a park. Though that park ordinance requires grading, and that's about it, no other improvements. And that amount, I believe, was 2.68 acres is what we got in here. This parkland dedication is 3.28 acres. Now, the difference is between what's required in the ordinance and what's actually being done is it's an easement versus a fee interest or a deed over to the city on it. There are some storm basins in there, some water basins. Normally that is not included in the park, but in this case it is. There's also a lot of improvements that are being spent on this, which normally would not be in an improvement in a park also. In the city's ordinance, the ordinance allows the city council to enter into an agreement to a park dedication that is other than just the straight acreage, like is normally dictated. If the council feels like it was a good trade. So the trade-off in this is obviously
the improvements that are being built in there and the maintenance and everything else. So I think staff feels like it's a good trade. It's a, would recommend approval on it.
So maintenance would include painting the pickleball court every once in a while.
Yep, that's right. Yep. And mowing and stuff like that.
What kind of shallow do you have pickleball?
Now, no, there is a provision in here if there's elsewhere in the park where suddenly the city says, boy, we'd like to have a playground over there. Right? There's provisions that the city can put that in themselves. It's not gonna be the obligation of the owner to just perpetually do whatever the city says, if, boy, we'd like another trail over there, or boy, it'd be great to have some benches over there. So the city does have the ability under there to add those additional amenities if it desires, but that would be the city's responsibility for expense and maintenance in the future on that.
So this agreement would be in perpetuity,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay, how about maintenance on what's out there? Pickleball court.
Yeah, that in perpetuity, the property owner will maintain that. That's in this agreement.
Okay, so maintain it to our standards, right? So that
Yes. Yep,
we're happy and it's useful to us.
that's right. And I think it even has provisions in there. If they fail to maintain it, the city can do that and assess it against the owner. So we can step in and do that if that was okay, if that.
Let's hope it goes smoother than the last assessment we talked about.
Too soon.
Too soon.
Yeah.
So I have a couple questions. There's no pool in this complex, correct?
Correct.
And there is no clubhouse? Or is?
There are many spaces, yeah. Including the clubhouse is like within the building, but yeah.
Okay, and so
Sorry, you-
the clubhouse would be private to the apartment complex?
When you say clubhouse, it's not like a separate structure. It's a common space within the building, amenity space, but it would only be to residents. Everything within the building is only for residents. Yep.
Okay, and what's outside?
And
the
their
building?
guests. Sorry,
guests.
and their
No, no,
guests.
fair.
Yeah.
But the parkland outside the building, including parking, would be available for the public?
We're allowing the parking for the public. It is not in the easement though, correct? Eric?
Portion on the east side.
Sorry.
There's a portion of it on the east side that is within, so if you look at this red exhibit here, you'll see kind of the area that is within that easement that encumbers the site, so, and you do also have all of the parking that's on a colonial circle as well, that is quote unquote public parking provided with the projects.
Where exactly are we talking about here on the map? Can you indicate for me?
Everything in red is the area that's encompassed within the easement that's being dedicated to the city.
And it will be part of the renter's agreement or contract that they'll know that this is public parkland as well, I guess.
Yeah, yep.
I'm not sure if I'm asking it well.
Yeah.
Get my gist.
We'll notify, I mean, it'll be within all the documents and things. And they won't have any ability to tell anyone to leave or anything like that. And if anything did happen and you told us, then that would be a violation in their lease of the quiet enjoyment provision.
I just want to
Yeah.
make sure they know what they're getting, right? They have
Yep.
the information, so it's in their documents that this is public and.
Yeah, and if anybody acts out as a resident, that would be a violation of their lease. So there would be penalties and or termination. So we do have something we could do of consequence if anyone.
I'm not
You know.
expecting anything, but.
So that's a great question.
People get your.
No, it's a great question. Yeah.
I think one other thing to point out is that it does also require in the agreement that the park be open the same hours as our public parks.
Okay.
Okay,
Except for Sunset is the.
I think that's our public
Yeah, but we play that out only because not our preference, but the Parks Department said it would be a great idea, their preference, that we have no pickleball going on after sunset because of the noise issue. Like that was their preference, so we didn't add that in. Yep.
And then
But we added it in.
it also provides if the city wants to step in, they can handle like the reservation for the pickleball court. It starts getting ugly and unorganized. The Park and Rec can step in and take care of those reservations. Handle the
Can't
reservation.
imagine it being ugly and unorganized.
I'm good.
Well, no, yeah, a lot of positives. this is something I do want to make the point, although it's new, like you said, for Norwalk. We've done this in a few different municipalities on different project types, not just apartments. It is kind of an increasing trend, not just in the US, but globally, because then with public budgets being what they are everywhere, it shifts the ongoing maintenance cost. It gives you tax base for it. So it's a trend that's been happening more and more. Yeah, I'm sure City Manager Nelson could comment, but yeah.
I will just say that I believe he's accurate. I've already heard from some other metro communities that are interested in similar things.
Okay, thank you.
Right now, we're just considering the park. Agree.
That's
Parking
correct. Correct, yep. We had to have that agreed to first because the site plan that you're gonna approve or gonna consider at the next one contemplates this agreement. So if you'd say no to the parkland agreement, well, then the site plan agreement can go forward without adjustments.
Move to approve.
Okay, so motion by Bakers, seconded by Meineke. Any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call a roll?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Meineke,
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 8K is resolution approving the site plan of Legacy Circle Apartments. So Luke, what do you got?
So, apartment complex, center of the circle, Legacy Circle Apartments. 189 units within the apartment building. It's kind of a T-shaped building located on that lot. Park easement we have at least talked about. The access to the lot from driveways was modified from what you originally saw to remove that straight through connection. So now you have a connection kind of on the southwest side and on the northwest side. And then the parking kind of loops around. There still will be a connection also out to the east through the drive that they connect with on the Unity Point area. They're on the east side of the lot. Architectural wise, meet all of our architectural requirements that we put forward. And really all the other requirements that we were very prescriptive in the PUD are met. We did get some public comments recently come in regarding the parking scenario. Given time, I would be happy to explain that more if you want me to talk more about the parking. If you feel you understand it, I will not do that.
I understand it. My question would be though, right? Headlight, taillight, right? So what kind of buffer is required to go up there around the outside of that parking area?
Yeah, so
it
on,
doesn't shine in the
perfect.
ground?
Yep, exactly. So on the south side of the parking lot, and so we're talking about the public parking, or the private parking, not the public. You can see it's kind of hard to see, I guess, but in the white space between the sidewalk and the parking to the north, there's a couple lines in there, and one of those lines with a couple little dots represent fencing that they will put up. So that is intended to help block that
So that's gonna be,
headlights from anybody that's pulling in to park, and they're facing south.
that's gonna be like a 6-foot fence or
I don't, but 3 foot.
3 foot?
And we did specify that in the PUD that it would be a 3-foot fence on top of is there a small berm there?
No.
Okay, just
Buffer plant material there.
plant material, yes.
Fence, so it's not just like picket fence, it's solid.
Okay.
Fence there.
Okay, that'll be enough to obstruct the light from the store.
That is our hope. I mean, I'd be just.
Well, that's my hope too, young man.
Do exactly how that would do that, but the intent is for it to block that, your general.
And in the event that there's issues in the future, we could, for instance, come later and say, hey, can we just do, head-in parking only? Right? I mean, I'm not saying we need to do that now, but if it's an issue in the future, that is something we could do.
I don't know if we could on the private side, because I think the headlight issue with the neighbors to the south are going to be somebody that's in the private lot parking to the south, right?
Right.
On the, where's you got the public parking, where they pull
Mhm.
across the road, is parallel parking?
Parallel across the road, yep.
Parallel, okay.
Yep.
What else?
Motion?
You second. Motion by Livingston, seconded by Brown. Any further public comment?
I guess I did just want to, as part of the parking thing, sorry, we want to get out here. The resolution does acknowledge that that whole parking scenario is technically a waiver of the parking requirements because of the mix of on-street and private. So resolution does say that, just want to make sure that was identified.
All right. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Cool,
Yeah.
Livingston,
Yes.
Meineke,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes. All right, motion carries. Item 8L. Is a resolution accepting infrastructure and approving the final plat of Legacy Circle Apartments, Plat 1. So since the infrastructure is already there, we can approve the final plat of the apartments. Is that right, Luke?
Correct. And really all this is doing is just, we need some line work to be able to actually create the legal easements for the park and any other easements in the area.
I think this has been a little too easy tonight, so no. I know.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you laughing.
That is kind of funny.
All right. Any other discussion, comments, questions? From the
Motion.
council or? Okay, motion by Livingston, seconded by Meineke. Any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Livingston.
Yes.
Meineke,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 8M. First reading of an ordinance. Yep. First reading of an ordinance amending
Go ahead,
chapter
go on,
177 rates and fees. Providing for recycling and solid waste fees. So this is to update our fees, rates and fees. This one specifically for utilities, garbage and recycling. Gene?
Yes, save the best for last.
You got
Okay, so staff is recommending water and sewer utility rate and garbage recycling increases. We're recommending that stormwater stay at the same rate. The city council approved moving forward with charges to the availability fees based on meter sizes at the April 18th meeting, and those are also incorporated into this ordinance. So to kind of break it down by fund, the water department, there are two major components in the water department. It's purchasing water and it's our capital improvements. We purchase water from Des Moines Waterworks through the end of this year, December of 2024. And we will become a member of Central Iowa Waterworks January 1 and purchase water through them. Yeah.
Gene?
So that is two of our major. Yeah.
Turn off your video. I think that
You're blinking it.
you're kind of cutting in and out.
Unstable.
Try it again.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Are we good?
Yep.
Okay. So I talk about the water. There are the two main components. It's purchasing water and it's our capital improvement projects. I don't know if you heard this. We purchase water through Des Moines Waterworks. You know that. January 1, it will be Central Iowa Waterworks. One of our major components, other than Central Iowa Waterworks, is our water tower. It's going to be about $7 million, and that is kind of driving our rates. So we're recommending a 6% rate increase to water plus a 50-cent per month availability fee increase. That is about $2.87 a month based on an average usage of 5,000 gallons. For sewer, we also have two major components, and that is treatment costs and our capital improvement. So Water Reclamation Authority, they treat our sewer. That is about 47% of our budget. And then we also have some major sewer expansion projects going to the south and west and then northeast. And that is driving our rates as well. We're recommending 3% in sewer and then 25-cent per month in availability fees, which would be about $1.85 a month per average to a homeowner. As I mentioned, stormwater, we're recommending maintain $750 a month. Garbage and recycling are basically pass-through fees for Metro Waste Authority. Garbage went up 4%, recycling went up 0.9%, so 4.9% overall. The city also adds $1.28 per month for administrative fees. Mainly those are our personnel costs. We take phone calls, we schedule things, we give out stickers, so on and so forth. And then we have mailing and postage fees for those as well. This is the first of 3 readings. If there are any, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Okay.
Okay. Any public comment? All right. AJ? Motion by Livingston, seconded by Cool. Any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call a roll?
Councilmember Minneke,
Yes.
Baker,
Yeah.
Brown,
Yes.
Cool,
Yeah.
Livingston.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 9, future agenda items. Purpose of this is for council to give direction to staff by way of motion to have items placed on future agendas. It's not for discussion of the merits of the subject matter. So any future agenda items for tonight?
I've not tonight, but future agenda item.
Future agenda, right.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the possibility of like a pedestrian something that crosses Highway 28. So, gives, I know we have stoplights, but I'm thinking of like a bike path or something across where you don't have to actually go across the road itself.
Under or over.
Yeah,
Grade.
under or over.
A grade separated.
Yeah, to get from, kind of the businesses and stuff on the west side to all the action that is happening and will continue to happen on the east side. Yeah. I mean, something fun like that.
Not something fun like.
So, anyway.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I heard 3 yeses, so let's say, any
Abatement.
tax abatement? Yep. Any- Do I have another, yeah, oh, yeah, yes?
Yeah,
Anything else?
residential stuff.
That's like the most of 3 months. Take it and run.
Let's, well, no, I won't. It's for council too. I'll hold off on that one until later. All right. So we got those 2. Council inquiries and staff updates. Luke.
Great trip out to DC.
Yeah.
I know that I'm probably more careful about finances sometimes than I should be. I tend to view our trip out to DC critically, wanting to make sure that it's a good use of taxpayer dollars. And I can comfortably say after returning that it absolutely was. We had some great discussions with our representatives out there and senators. Just good trip. So thank you to those of you that went along. For some of the council members that didn't get there this year, just keep an eye open for next year. It'd be great to see some others go out there and experience that.
Thanks for going. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
For those of us that still have young kids and sports and things like that, we're grateful for those that go. Thank you.
Yep. Jackie.
Yeah, I thought that DC was great too. It's the first time I've been. I thought it was definitely worthwhile and really glad that we tacked on the visit to the Iowa or the Kosovo embassy.
Yeah, that was good. Last minute thing.
One more thing I should add. Iowa Sister States is getting ready to vote in a new chairperson. Interesting that whoever is the chair is expected to go on all of the sister states traveling things at the expense of the city who
That's too bad you didn't get it.
designates, well, first of all, vote's not yet, there's still time. But no, I was very surprised that, yeah. And the city of Des Moines, it's an interesting interplay because the city of Des Moines allocates them money, but then also gives them expectations and volunteers them to do things that they don't really give them money to do. It's a very interesting situation. Anyway.
That's why we don't emulate.
Yes. Exactly. Jason. Nothing. Lindsay.
Nothing.
Is Robin on it?
Yes.
Robin? I saw Robin.
She
unmute.
unmuted, yeah.
Robin, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Oh, no?
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the proclamation, and I have nothing else.
Okay, you're welcome. Holly?
Hopefully, Mayor, you'll talk about your visit with the Major League Baseball goal.
Okay.
Back to you. Just that we're making really great progress in the Southwest Development Corridor. Started the annexation talks with the property owners and the development group still moving forward on everything with purchases, and it's looking really, really good, moving quickly. So big deal. Looking at you. It's not-
Let's do Gene Kelly next.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Chief?
Mark your calendar, July 20th, Saturday, Dare Golf Tournament. Down in Ackworth. It's Saturday for the first time. Usually it's Friday, but we couldn't coordinate a Friday. So Saturday, July 20th. And tomorrow at 11 a.m., feel free to come by Lakewood Elementary for hot dogs, chips, and cookies provided by Officers Criswell and Dunlop for Dare Picnic. It's always a good time to feed every kid at Lakewood, and we'll be slinging hot dogs and eating some ourselves. So come on by, and we love to have you. That's all I have.
All right.
Pretty tasty hot dogs too, as I recall.
Yep.
Chief?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Wayne?
Nothing.
Tony?
Nothing else.
I had some stuff, but they threatened me, so.
So you have nothing?
Nah, beat me up if I do.
And Carrie's not on. Okay,
Just one thing.
go for it.
I had the opportunity to go down to Branson and had a good time last 2 days, but I know I made some purchases and wife made some purchases. I was surprised all the different taxing districts they created for different purposes. So I shared that receipt for the city manager. I thought he might be interested in looking at that. But they've got separate districts for ambulances and schools. It's just incredible, you know. But anyway, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, do you ever get one of those receipts, you know, that's super long? And it's because they have, you know, survey stuff at the end. Well, this one was long because of all the listed out. It's crazy.
It was like those statements that the state wants us to send out now. You know?
All right. George?
P&Z seems to be going very well. Don't see any changes from what they send to us.
Okay. Good. Brian?
I wanted to reiterate, I'm very frugal with budget, but this trip to DC, I thought will pay us some dividends. And I cannot tell you how much you learn just talking with other cities
Oh, yeah.
in a lot of situations.
Real valuable.
Yeah, for sure. Jim?
Nope.
I would reiterate on the DC trip, we were able to plant the seed for the interchange out on I-35. I think as we move forward with our project, I think there's certain milestones we need to set that we might go out and just send a couple people back out to Washington DC to let our representatives know exactly what we're doing. Just to keep water in that seed. And then today, Holly wrangled me into going out to City State Bank Fieldhouse. Is that right? And I met with, there were several representatives from Major League Baseball. There were several representatives from Little League. There were several representatives from Musco, and showed them the field house. They were looking around. It was the first time I actually saw a game where the cameras were calling balls and strikes. It was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was really cool because I saw one go across and and I should have swung at that. And it called it a strike. It's like, okay. So, yeah, so it was It's very interesting.
Who do you yell at?
Right, well, there's still one umpire there. That's out in
Okay,
the field.
there's
So
gotta
you
be
got,
somebody.
you still got somebody to yell at. You're right. Okay, that's all I had. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, so motion by Cool, second by Livingston. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, same. We're adjourned, 9:12 PM.
All right.